Hey all, this is Chris and you're listening to One Cross Radio, and today's going to be interesting because we have no topic planned, and I'm joined by three lifelong friends of mine from back in childhood. Mike.
Hey.
Tommy.
Hello.
And Christian.
Hey.
And we have no planned topic. And it's been a barrel of laughs already trying to figure out what the heck to talk about. We should have started this a while ago.
Yeah, I told you we should have hit record.
When you were saying lifelong friends, I thought you were going to say legendary friends. And like, oh, that's awesome. Legendary.
I met you when I was 15.
we met before. Like,
I'm
back in... when
was
did
it?
I meet you, actually?
Middle
like,
school.
were you... Yeah, grade 7 or...
Yeah,
that's when I met
Grade
you.
7, yeah. And Christian, at like 4th grade, because you were on Rexley at the time. Yeah.
Yes. Fond memories of
I
childhood.
forgot about that.
Fond memories of childhood when there was a pool and rude people.
Yes.
Just get ready for a lot of laughs, and yeah. Most of the laughs are going to be for us. I have no idea if you'll find this funny.
Yes, this will be a visual day in an audio podcast.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
We're going to talk in sign language?
Open floor, gentlemen.
Speaking of sign language. No.
All right, let's hear
you know who I think is a nice guy? Chris Pratt. Because he did this thing. There was a mini scandal the other day where he said, like, don't read the subtitles, turn on the audio, turn it up, and it's one of his Instagram things, I think. And then all the deaf people are like, hey man, we need to read the subtitles, which is obviously an overreaction. He wasn't speaking to them.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's no
anyway,
way that comment was meant for them.
As a gentleman, he learned sign language, or maybe he already knew some, and he like signed an apology to the, I almost said blind people, that doesn't make sense. The deaf people. I've had that happen. Where like I've met a blind person, I'm like, oh man, I don't know sign language. I'm going to talk to them.
I got a sign so this blind guy can understand my sorrow.
Sir, are you waving your hands in front of my face?
I can hear it.
Feel the wind.
Feel the wind moving.
He just seems like a good guy. Like, everything I've heard about him, he just seems like an upstanding guy. Which is nice to hear, especially because...
Scandals?
Like every couple days you hear someone else has done something horrific.
I was saying to Tommy how Danny Masterson, I was reading how he has allegedly, there's 4 different accounts of terrible things that he's done.
Oh, terrible or inappropriate?
No,
Terrible.
legit,
Terrible.
yeah.
Oh, okay,
like,
well.
Bill Cosby level terrible.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
pretty bad.
Yeah.
What? Was he American?
And then the bop.
Well, no, but I mean, maybe. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I don't know. I just know what you told me earlier.
Yeah, I assume that there's an element of that, right?
I see. Oh, hide.
Yeah, that's
Chemical coercion.
oh jeez.
Yeah, there's like on Reddit, people are talking like, who would you like if it comes out next? Who would you be most disappointed or most shocked in? And the number one answer is always Tom Hanks. Like if he comes out with some sort of scandal, the world is ending.
See, I could believe that just because Hanks is always like, he just seems so wholesome.
He's the nicest
and
guy ever.
He's you can see pictures on Instagram and online of him like having fun and photobombing with drunk fans. Like a guy's completely drunk, so he's like, yeah, of course I'm going to take your picture. This will be hilarious.
I love drunk people, especially when I'm sober.
And that was the first sign we had that Tom Hanks was inappropriate.
That's why it's the same, right? No.
And you've got mail. You can he's just so good in that.
There was an Onion article saying it was like kids don't know who to look up to now that Tom Hanks has murdered 5 people or something.
Oh my gosh. Gotta love those parody articles.
Some of them are just spot on, right?
Yeah, so like and then there's the reverse where you read like an actual article on like U.S. politics and you're like, that has to be an Onion article, but nope, that's really happening.
It started happening like a couple of years ago. Now it's just like it started with movies. Like there was a slow trickle of movies being made where it's like, really, it's like something you see on Saturday Night Live, but it's actually a legitimate movie. And then it's actually turned to reality where like, yeah, there's so many things that you would assume they have to be an Onion article, and they're absolutely not. And it's
Unfortunately, real.
it's terrifying. It shakes your faith in people, right?
It shakes your face.
Shakes your face.
It's just whoa.
I'm alone in this world.
It's a really, really weird time just with everything going on within Hollywood. Like, I think if Will Smith gets anything attached to him, like some people like, oh, he's shady because of how the thing with that, although like that's kind of been left more so like, oh, he got the old Aunt Viv fired and she's like, that actress is just not letting it go. But aside from that, like, he's a guy who just seems, everybody's like, oh, he's so wholesome, he always plays good guys, except the rare time he plays a really good bad guy.
Yeah.
And I would definitely watch him as a Death Shot movie. Like, he was one of the better things about Suicide Squad, if you guys saw it.
I haven't seen it. No, I don't care to.
Yeah, no, it's not good.
Yeah. I've seen the Batman scenes and like the Flash scene, and I figured that's enough.
Yeah, you get the gist.
It just nothing about it appealed to me. You know,
it would have been a lot better had they left a lot of the Jared Leto footage in. I think, he was also. I loved his Joker.
I'll give him credit. Like, I didn't like the look of the character.
No, but that's not his fault.
But no, that's not his fault. And a lot of people like ripped on his Joker. I'm like, nah, it's actually pretty good. And they added a thing that exists for that character, like the whole weird sexual thing that he has that we haven't seen on film. So channeling that, I was like, all right, awesome. We can still get original things out of here until you just get Mark Hamill. Just get him to voice over somebody in the movie. Yeah. Until that happens, like, different takes, I'm all for. How did we get here?
I don't know, but I dug the smile.
Oh, yeah, Will Smith. The seamless transition. But just to talk about Suicide Squad for another sec, only good things were him, Margot Robbie, Jared Leto's Joker, and sign me up for more Captain Boomerang. Like, I never thought I'd want more Jai Courtney,
yeah, I heard he was
but he
good.
was hilarious as Captain
pretty funny.
Boomerang. Like, it's such a ridiculous character, but every time he's on screen, I was loving every second. So I'm like, bring this guy back. Don't give him a solo movie because that'll wreck it, but just have him being consistently small parts. He's fine.
Yeah, nice supporting role.
Was he Australian?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Oh yeah.
That was like his I don't know what to call it, like a saving grace role, because he was going down. Like,
no, well, that's they kept trying to make Jai Courtney happen, and you're like, it's not gonna happen.
That's the honest trailer for Terminator Genesis. Yeah. Like, stop trying to make Jai Courtney a thing. It's not gonna happen.
And then
It worked with Justin Long, so.
And then when you mentioned honest trailers, like, there's the whole thing going on in Hollywood, and Andy Signor from Honest Trailers, like, and Screen Junkies, he was one of the head writers, and then he had a sex scandal as well.
Yeah.
Which they took a 3-week break from. Thankfully, they're back because that's a fun channel.
Yeah, but he's gone. Right?
Yeah, he's 100% fired, and they did a whole video, which if you guys haven't seen, you should check it out. They've got like some HR worker woman there, and they're talking about like, okay, what the heck, like, what really does constitute, because we were blindsided by this and we're not prepared, like, where's the line between a joke and and what happens if someone finds this offensive later, like, what should we do, how can we make that environment? It was interesting, just because most of the time they just talk about movies, and I love them for that. But then they've slowly started addressing some of that stuff without wanting to get too political, because everything's friggin' political now.
Yeah, that kind of that topic of the scandals and all that, and removing the stigma of sexual harassment and coming out like that. I don't know why Christian reacted to that. He looks kind of nervous about something. No, we were talking about that earlier.
I'm certain that I took that the wrong way.
Let's not mention the grittier parts, but we were talking about, like, what is now that it seems like
we're thinking about the gritty parts.
Yeah, the line between what used to be okay and what was sexual harassment, it's changing. You know, like. And I was saying I'm concerned, and listeners, don't think me a monster. I'm thinking, like, is it going to be hard for guys to just meet women?
Flirt with women.
And then on the flip side of that, just, is it going to be like one thing I see out of it, and I'm happy to see out of it, is it's not just like guys or just men's right activists or whatever just being like, hey, this happens to guys too. Yeah. Like a lot of people are saying like, no, this is a universal issue. Yes, it might happen more so to women, but it does happen to men as well. So like to echo your comment, is it going to be harder for some women who are like sometimes just bubbly and friendly, not even like sexually suggestive in their flirting, just bubbly and friendly?
Because sometimes work flirts are fun.
Yeah. Is it going to be something more so than that? It's an involving thing. Christian, you looked like you had something to say.
Oh, okay. Well, I was thinking two things that see, like the thing is that like one thing I've and I guess like it's weird that it's taken me this long to realize it, but one thing I realized as of not like but recently in my life where women like there's the reason that like these double standards exist is that women are by and large weaker than men, right? Like physically, so they're like no. I mean,
we just lost a lot of listeners.
And it's weird, obviously coming from me. Like that's a bold claim.
You're saying like background wise, biologically, like
like women like they feel they're like when for instance when a man goes out into the world, like he's never afraid that he's going to be sexually assaulted. Or if
I fear that every day.
Or if you assume that like okay it could happen, but like what I'll do is I'll be like, hey man, back off, right?
Yeah, we can strike back.
Yeah, like and women, I guess they feel like there's always this presupposition, I guess, of like they're a potential victim, right? And that's one thing that I realized where it's like they go through their lives like that, right? And
being on guard, right?
Yeah.
Or thinking that it could happen at any moment. Yeah, like I was watching this thing the other day. Or what, I don't even know. It was a series of pictures with quotes or something. I don't know what it was. And it was just like all these women saying, yeah, I keep like claws on my keychain that can scratch an eye out. Or like I have this because it could happen at any moment. Because it could happen at any moment. So it's almost like they're predisposed to fear.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be like that.
Yeah, no. But at the same time, it shouldn't. It absolutely shouldn't. But
that's just the world we live in, right?
Right? Like it is. It's weird. It's so. Yeah.
The only way it gets better is by teaching our children better, right?
Yeah.
And we teach our sons to be better men than we are, and our parents have been. And,
and I think.
And then when that happens, we can eventually start teaching our daughters that they don't have to be scared anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where like that toxic masculinity thing is sort of scary because I mean, I think I agree. There is like, you can potentially be toxic in your masculine behavior, but I don't think boys should be ashamed of being boys, right?
No, absolutely not.
We should teach them how to be proud of being a man as long as their behavior is proper, right?
Yeah. And in being a man, you're not taking anything away from your fellow man or like or women, your fellow sister. Like you shouldn't be doing that. Yeah.
Well, that goes back to my what I started saying is that our younger guys, say our sons, if we're using that example, are they going to be living in the world where we previously went up and spoke to a girl and asked her out or whatever, showed some sort of interest? Are they going to have this, like women have they're predisposed to the fear? Are the boys now going to have that fear that, oh, I can't approach that woman because she's going to report me just for talking to her because it could be taken the wrong way, because maybe they're going to have drilled into their head that whenever a guy talks to you, he's trying to, take advantage of you or something like that.
And that's where I think something like we're having right now, and it's something I don't see enough of, and I've said it in private conversations and probably on here. The civil discourse seems to be a lost thing.
Yeah.
Where it's like if someone's coming up to me and saying, it's the obvious example, but say it's a hardcore third wave feminist and it's very like the conversation's very anti-men, I'd be like, I don't necessarily agree with what you're saying, but I don't see how you've gotten there. Or a man yelling at a woman about men's rights, being like, how come men's shelters are underfunded? How come there's less shelters for men or less resources, blah, blah, blah. These are important conversations, but so many times we're just shouting at each other and not like, hey, can you walk me through this and understand?
Yeah.
And then get to, even if I don't agree, I can get where you're coming from now.
Maybe we can find some common ground
exactly
somewhere. And that's the beginning of a relationship.
Yeah.
I think it's a shame that right now we have the opportunity to look at to actually be like, to make this a human issue, right? To say, hey, you know what? You're absolutely right. We do need to take better care of women. And by the way, also, like, this stuff happens to men. So let's have it, like, you know, I'll be a feminist, you be a meninist, and we'll both work together, right?
Yeah.
Hominist?
I don't know. But it's...
Chauvinist?
It's a shame that everyone's really doubling down and getting entrenched in their sides. There was one more thing I wanted to hear.
Which, that to, like, it's... I've said it for years, and it's been scary to me, and I'm seeing it happen in Canada more, and it's something that's... Sorry to throw you under the bus, America. It's just how I've seen it with you guys.
It's
but
just so easy.
They threw themselves
but with you guys, like with down in the States, it's been very much, especially politically. And then I've seen it because I pay attention to what's going on in the church. That's where I learned my faith impacts everything. Like seeing it, even how it's like you're Republican or you're Democrat, and there's no in between. That started to impact how they handle faith. Where it's like, oh, you can't be a Christian if you're voting Democrat, or vice versa. And it's happening everywhere through there, and I definitely think it's starting to happen up here.
Yeah, because
if you agree, if you give the opposing side even a ledgeway, like, that's not a word, but you get what I mean. Like, if you give them a little bit, it's like, well, then you're on their side, and you're
either
evil.
liberal or conservative at this point.
Exactly.
Fall in line with like the party thought, right?
Yeah.
If you step out just a little bit, we can box you into the enemy and not have to think about you or address anything
exactly.
you say or think.
Where it's.
I've been called a right wing from a friend because I didn't agree with everything she had to say.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't have to agree with everything.
No.
Vicky?
Yes.
Oh,
I was trying not to name names, but she's not going to hear this
Call her
anyway.
out on public, international, intergalactic audio.
And it wasn't like outright those direct words, but it was everything that she said. It directly led me to believe that she's assuming I'm now an enemy. On certain topics. Yeah. And it's like, no. Just because I don't see eye to eye to you on everything does not make me a bad guy.
Does not make you my enemy here.
And what's interesting with that, just because you said you've been, like, someone grouped you in with that, like, I've had it where it's like having conversations with people. Some of them I've seen it where it's like, oh, you're in the right wing, you're too left, and then I'll have a conversation later that day, and then someone will be like, oh, you're way too liberal, you're too this. I'm just like,
right?
I'm honestly probably on the middle, like.
Yeah.
You can make the argument that now that there's the extremes are gaining so much, or their voices are getting so much louder, that it's pushing people into the center. It's
pushing everybody into the center. Like I do have some conservative ideas, but I mean, I still would consider myself more of a liberal than anything else.
That's the whole reason why we have the two parties, right? I mean, like, it's even you can make the argument that only having two parties is actually a manifestation of the way we are sort of the duality of man,
like devil and the angel,
on
exactly, the shoulders.
Right? Like, this is we. I mean, a lot of people. Like the analytical mind and the creative mind essentially are they're I don't know. I just feel like the parties represent the two most easiest ways you can define people, right?
Yeah.
Like if you boil down like millennia of human behavior, this is sort of what we come up with.
But yet those two sides don't actually make up what a person is.
No. And then
they're so much more complicated. We're so much more complicated than just left or right.
That's what I love with Canada. Like, at least we've got kind of four major parties and then a bunch of others.
Where I mean, a couple of them are mostly jokes. I mean, it basically comes down to
the pirate party.
The liberals or the PC.
Well, for example, the last federal election, I'll say, I ended up voting in the Green Party. Like, I've actually voted for, I'll say, the major four, although it's mostly the major two, and the NDP can be the third. But
if they're lucky.
Like, I've voted for all three. Like, with my education background being social work, like, I do lean towards that. And I'll say social reform, not social justice, because you get the people who take it to the extreme on the internet with the social justice warriors, where I'm like, that's like you're not, to me, you're not doing anything good by doxing, by doing that. Like you're not doing positive change. That's not helping anybody.
Yeah, and
That's enforcing groupthink, which isn't a good thing.
It's insane. I mean, it's like, what's the end game? What's really the end game? Like, do you really think that like look at, you have people like Milo, you have Trump, you have all these. The right is like rising in response to a lot of behavior, and it's not like, I'm not saying like, I'm not trying to put the onus on the left to change what they do, but at the same time, it's like you gotta. If you start defining people by the color of their skin or their religion, I mean, if that's what's most important and not like their character or their thought, I mean, that's a dangerous road to go down, right? Mm-hmm. And then you see the way it's played out in history, and it's not good.
It's cause and effect.
Not good.
Yeah,
it happens over and over and over again.
What it all is it's a class thing. I mean, I was talking to Monica the other night. We were talking about it, and I was saying like, you can have like and I can't remember his name, but he's like a rich Republican, and he's African American. He's black, and he doesn't have the same perspective as someone who would be classically defined as black. He doesn't have that black experience.
Right.
So.
You mean Ben Carson?
Ben Carson, no, I don't. But that's actually a really good example. Like that's a good example, right? Like he's sort of been isolated, and simply because by virtue of the fact that of his upbringing, like his his parents were wealthy, and I was also listening to another podcast with Thaddeus Russell and Moshe Kasher, and they were talking about how they grew up in, I think it was Baltimore, and they grew up in a largely black neighborhood. They went to a black school, and they were treated the same way. And given, but from their experiences, from the things they said, you could make the argument that they were treated in a similar way to perhaps how a black teenager would have been treated in the 50s, right? Mm-hmm. There was several instances where they were kidnapped at knife point and held for hours and made to do like terrible things and stuff like that. And they don't hate black people. They grow up and they still, in fact, they worship them at the time, right? They wanted to be them.
Yeah,
because they're so cool.
Yeah, and you can make the argument that a white person growing up in that situation would be able to identify more with the sort of the experience of being a black person in America than someone like Ben Carson.
Well, and that's where you could even say like Eminem has that window, like growing up in where he did in the poor area of Detroit, and then like he did that video against Trump, which some people are like, oh, surprised by. It's like, nah, dude's always been pretty political.
Yeah, look what he did to Bush.
Yeah,
like half the songs on one album.
Like I don't always agree with what the guy says, but I appreciate his perspective.
That was a terrible freestyle. I was not impressed.
Yeah, I was not impressed. When I heard about it,
I mean, like freestyling is all supposed to be off the cuff. That was a clearly written.
Yeah.
But then
no rhythm to it either.
It was
before. Do it to some sort of like.
It was just spoken word
and then the random shots.
Poetry, that's all it was.
The random shots of his crew just standing there going like nodding.
Yeah. But then when you
I can look serious.
But then you saw like Snoop Dogg's reaction, and then other people being like, he gets it. Mm-hmm. And then a bunch of other white people being like,
I don't get it.
Like,
I disagree.
Where it's like, I don't get it. Where
I disagree.
Yes. And that's the last time we saw him.
Like, I'd love it if there could be more like discussion. And what's kind of interesting, it's just interesting to me. It's whatever. Like, some people are surprised how we've gotten to Trump. Where I'm like, I'm not surprised at all because you can track it. When Bush came in, like for better or worse, he was there 8 years. Like, and he did good, he did bad. But then when Obama came in, everybody was done with Bush, and he was touted as like he will save the country.
Right. Yeah.
That's an impossible standard to live up to. I think I read a stat where it's like politicians can maybe do 50% of what they promise, maybe. Because before they get there, they're like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
And then when they get there, it's like, holy crap, there's so much more to it than I thought. I'm not actually going to be able to get it done.
Well, it's not only that, but they're also fundraising most of the time.
Exactly.
Like what?
And then, like, Obama was there and he did a lot of great things.
Yeah. He would have done more if the Senate not been against him.
To me in Canada, I was with you, we were getting pizza and we were watching people down in the States talking about like universal healthcare, the Obamacare thing, being like, we don't want to be like a socialist country. I'm like, free healthcare is pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
Like, yes, it sucks that I wait in a hospital at times 8 hours. But that's Toronto East General. Like that's it.
Almost one of those onion moments. Yeah, sometimes like I'm waiting there for 16 and a half hours. Like who hasn't waited in a hospital?
But that's a reality for us though.
Yeah,
like we pay for it on our taxes.
And it's not all the time.
No, and it's not all the time. The times I've been in and out in half an hour.
Yeah.
But that's the thing you run with Emerge, where it's like, yes, you're feeling awful, but someone's got shot. Of course they're going to get through before you.
Absolutely.
But then, and if
My
they need a
elbow
specialist,
feels funny.
But it's still waiting.
Elbow feels strange.
Waiting out 8 hours is a lot better than losing your house to pay for the bill.
exactly. Like
good.
waiting for that time is a lot better. So for us, that was weird to see. But then, as Obama was there and he was doing all those things, there was a lot of push and there was a lot of, for better or worse, political correctness going on. So then, of course, a guy like Trump can thrive because everybody's getting fed up with it. And there's a guy who doesn't give a crap about political correctness.
Just an entertainer.
Who truly does not. So then a lot of people are going to identify with that.
He's good at deflection.
And I don't know how you throw a Bernie.
Dude, it's such an S show, you know? Like, I can't... Like, we could discuss this for like 8 hours, right? If we want to really unpack it.
Yeah.
And there's one thing I wanted to say. I was gonna say, if you shout people down, you know, like if you shout down the argument, like basically what you're saying, if you try to silence people, what you're saying is that you can't come up with a good enough argument to counter their argument. Now, if you got to shout down a Nazi, if you can't come up with a good argument to counter a Nazi, what's going on, right? I think the best thing to do is if you think someone maybe don't give controversial people like Milo or Richard Spencer, people don't give them like a lone forum on which to speak. Maybe put them in a debate. If you're going to let them appear, right?
Yeah, let them express their views and then have those views countered with
and
an
when
actual
there's stuff
conversation
going on
and see how
where,
stupid they really are.
Because I think it was last week. Like, who's the professor in Canada you told me?
Jordan Peterson.
Yeah. So I was just reading about it yesterday from the National Post. Like, TA at I can't remember the university. She played a clip and then a bunch of people complained to the teacher. So then the interesting thing coming out of that is my understanding is TA is supposed to run by everything. So yes, she probably shouldn't have done that. But the interesting thing is from her perspective, they're like trying to shut that down, where it's like, no, I went to university. You go there to get challenged. You go there to grow.
Yeah,
you don't go there to just have your opinion reinformed.
Yeah.
Although I was listening to a podcast recently, and there's an interesting, I guess, statistic brought up that like 90% of the professors at universities in the United States, they're talking about, but 90% of them are all on the left. They're all like none of them are conservatives or Republicans in any way, and it's like we're really just sending our children into an echo chamber then.
Yeah, I think it started in the 60s, right? Where the intellectuals they got into positions of power at the university, and then you have people who they go their adult life in school, and then once they're out of school, they go literally right back into school, from like finishing university or college to working at that university or college, and they're sort of insulated in their bubble in their community, and now with like social media and stuff, people have the ability to tailor everything to what they want to see, which is, and not only that, but like Facebook does it automatically. Which is insane.
Yeah, it's
I don't use Facebook anymore, really. Like, especially not for like news.
No. Like I use Facebook because I keep track with friends. I'm involved in a church group, and then we post stuff on, like, we meet Monday night. So then there's the Mish Fam group, and it's like, all right, tonight's dinner, we're doing this, like, who can bring what, and that kind of thing. And then I started noticing with Facebook that, thankfully not so much with politics, because I'll read that more on my phone, and I try to find balanced sources, which is harder and harder to do.
Absolutely.
And then, so with Facebook, what I often see is it keeps track of your advertisements. So it's like, oh, there's a thing because I was looking at comic books. Like, you're just like, hey, you should buy this from Amazon. You should buy this from Redbubble. You should buy this from here. I'm like, I know I should, Facebook. I'm good. If we could take off the advertisements, that'd be great.
Well, it's terrifying because like, no, there's something going around in the news lately where, and it's gone around before, where, like, you know, if you talk around your phone or something that has Facebook app or the Messenger app or whatever, you'll start seeing ads for things you talk about. Yeah. But, you know, sometimes I'll see ads for things I've only thought in my head.
Yeah.
So they're predicting your behavior.
They're reading my mind.
No, dude,
Zuckerberg!
I think there's something, because, like, and I think it started happening in the 80s, where there's such a thing as big data, and basically they have access to everything about you, like literally your banking, like your credit, your wants, your needs, where you go, everything, right? They're compiling all of this data and selling, and so there's someone out there who knows literally, like, they can. It's so certain that they can predict your behavior. You know what I mean? Like, and what. It's terrifying.
Well,
like Matthew House and ascended
to me, the other thing with that is, I'm like, if your phone does predictive text, it's like, if, like, Facebook or whatever, they collect advertisements, the internet keeps track of where you're going. And I'm not meaning in a conspiracy Big Brother way. So it's not going to be surprising to me if there's then predictive advertising, meaning like, oh, Chris keeps going on Bible Gateway or movies or whatever.
What sites Mike goes?
Like, it's gonna start tailoring the advertisements to that, where it might be like, oh, hey, here's a suggested site, like suggested advertising and all that.
Yeah. I want to list of those sites after the podcast.
What sites?
I want to know where you go.
I go to my internet is Reddit, and I don't know. I don't do much on the internet anymore.
Oh, me neither, actually.
Yeah, same. But I love Reddit.
I watch TV on the internet, and that's about it. Facebook doesn't even work properly on my phone. I got a new phone, and like the app. I don't know. I'm still seeing a picture of my friend from like 6 days ago. It's just like that's the number one thing on my feed, and nothing else below it loads. Like I'm literally just looking at stuff from 6 days ago.
Except in my newsfeed.
I just won't load new stuff, and I don't mind it. I've actually gone like 4 days now without any Facebook.
There was a while ago where I think it was like right around the time that Trump got elected, because there was some other stuff going on. I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna take a break for a couple days. I'm just gonna go, because at that point everybody's shouting, and it's not even like, hey, let's have a discussion. Like, I'm not a fan of Trump. I wasn't a fan of Hillary. Like.
Yeah, they both suck.
But I'm like, I'm intrigued. I want to have the conversation. And then,
nobody wants to talk.
Really kind of spurred out of last year. I got to go to England and see my family, like right after the whole Brexit thing. Which over here for us, all we got was the hilarious John Oliver stuff, where it's like Brexit bad. It essentially boiled down to that. So then talking to family members who live over there and have that perspective. The House was more in favor for it, and they're all involved in their church. None of them are racist. None of them are anything like that. But it was this whole perspective that we didn't even get addressed over here. Well, and then getting to talk to the two who were in favor for it not happening. Yeah. And then I'm like, I can actually understand how both of y'all got to your conclusions. I'm not sure which one I would have gone with, because I see, but like you could actually understand both sides. It wasn't just, oh, you're racist if you're against this. It's like, no, we're wanting kind of our independence and being able to vote for laws for our country without other people impacting that. But then for the other people, it's like, who are we to say, no, you can't come here from your dangerous country? Who are we to do that? Especially that town is a very church town, and the church does have a mandate to love the poor, to reach out. So for them, it was also very much a spiritual issue. Which for the the side who did vote for it, they were like, that was a very tough thing as well. And for us, we could see how our church could still do that while voting yes. So it was then like, we're spiritually comforted in our decision. We don't feel like it's a conviction.
Well, I don't think I think every country has the right to decide who gets to come in. And I don't think that's it's a moral thing. I think it's, like, if you ask me, I think it should be based on, and this is someone who's accomplished nothing and would not be able to get into this country on merit. I think it should be based on merit. Or not should be, but I don't think it's wrong to base it on merit. And
I agree.
You know, you have people who, again, like, and this is controversial, but, you know, if you come to the West, like a place like Canada or the States or the UK, and a place where basically that gave birth to not only democracy but liberal values, you have to adopt those essentially that culture, those values, right? Which means like you can't believe that women are subjects or property or things like that, right? And you just little stuff like that. So I think there's I think it makes a lot of sense to be inscrutable, to be more selective, I suppose, as to who you let in, or it's not. You can't blame a country for doing that. And yeah, no, that's it.
That's right, the line.
Well, I do agree with you.
I think they're like. I
mean,
think
these are good values, right?
Yeah, no, like you want to be able to be offering a place for safety.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to do that, and then the thing we look at always is like how this and the states were founded, like where we usurped a land.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's at the end of the day you can actually, to me, you can have the argument like what gives us the right. Yeah. And I think that's fair, and there's definitely more we should do for First Nations. There's more we should do because, like, I'm not saying it in a way where we should ignore the rest of the world, but while we're welcoming people in, we also got to take care of those guys because we really shafted them.
It's the postmodernist
continuously.
Yeah, the postmodernist argument of like everything is relative. It's so alluring like that, right? When you think of it, like it's like, oh well, liberal values are so noble and so great, right? And they are, right? Like they gave us women's suffrage and like everything. They gave us everybody has the right to vote, everybody's equal, all that stuff. But then you could say, oh well, they were sort of imposed on another people who were here first, right? We sort of genocided, and it's like, yeah, that's true. Yeah. I really don't know. And then it gets to a point where it's like, well, you got to believe in something, right? And I don't know. Yeah.
And to me, I'll say I think it's like you can't have everything as an it's all relative. Yeah. Because that's great.
That's chaos.
That's great on the table, like on paper. Like communism on paper is amazing. Communism in action
is amazing on paper.
Communism in practice has never worked.
Well, the best intentions, right?
Yeah. And then it's all relative on paper, and some practices, yes.
Cuba's been the closest to making it work.
But then in actual existence, it wouldn't work. Like
China.
Everybody would take it to the extreme and all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like absolute power.
Like they're a lot more capitalist.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think
they found a nice balance between communism and capitalism.
Check this, homie. So
lay it down.
Get down.
From the streets of Toronto. Check this, homie.
So no, I think China's like it's insane because like they just went through. I think they just finished going through the Industrial Revolution. Like just a couple years ago, they were building like 40 factories a week or something, and now they're deconstructing as many per week, and they're on track to be like powered by mostly renewable energy by like 2030.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, they had this image of being the dirtiest country like in the world, right? Yeah. But now they're opening solar farms that are the size of like our province.
Yeah, and they're starting being able to like they just up their ability to grow food by like 40% or something like that, like their crops and their crop yields, and it's really fascinating to see like what total control, like when someone has total control of every process of the government in the country, if they're not like a psychopath. What they can do, right? Like it's very focused progress, and it's fascinating. And I feel dirty saying it because they're communists.
I do think like it's outrageous that they have to jump through so many hoops to try and get anything done. So if we're going to vote somebody into power, just give them the power to do what they said they were going to do.
And that's dangerous. Though.
Yeah, I know it's dangerous. I know that's the thing. Like
the Constitution's already like Swiss cheese.
When you look at stuff that everybody wants. Like, I've got friends who are libertarian, and I can understand that perspective, too. Where it's just you want as little government involvement because the individual wants to be able, like, as an individual, you want to be able to
autonomous, right?
Yes, thank you, because I just struggled with saying the word autonomous.
Indominus.
You want to Indominus Rex, Jurassic Worldness. Like, you want to autonomously be able to exist, be able to, like, as you work, you want your money to be yours. You want to be able to look after your family and raise them that way.
Yeah.
Like, I used to not get it, but then living out here, Hamilton, I've noticed has a growing like homeschool community, which kid in the 90s going to public school, I never understood.
Yeah.
But I'm starting to grow and understand and respect it. Like, if I have kids, it's something I would consider, not to shield your child from things, but there's things that you're not ready to learn at a certain age that are being taught in school. There are things where it's like, no, I want to be more hands-on in the education. I want to be able to teach my child. So I see that and I understand that. So the libertarian perspective, I've really started to understand. But on the flip side, I work in a shelter.
Yeah, well, these people aren't good at homeschooling their kids, right?
Well, that too.
And then it's
like if the people aren't good at homeschooling their kids,
do we need regulation? That's the opposite of libertarian.
Exactly. And then,
but we wouldn't.
The thing is with
the
thing is with homeschools, like it's a lot of it isn't just like one person and a friggin' madcap like being like, it's just this. It's like it's like it's actually like it's a group of people. Like it's a group of families. It's a smaller thing, and they'll go. It's not just like, hey, we're hanging out in the garage, just focusing on one thing, and that's it. It's a bunch of different perspectives, but it's parents doing hands-on things. So I love that. But then working in a shelter.
Cool.
Sorry, I keep cutting you off.
No,
I'm sorry.
I would go to keep cutting you off, and I realize I should not be doing this.
But I work in a shelter, and I'm like, we are drastically underfunded.
Yeah.
And then I see stuff in the city where I'm like, there's a petition going around where it's like, the government should, like, homelessness should be abolished. And I agree with that. Where it's like, it should be right in Canada for everybody to have housing. So on that, I'm like, yes, I'm all for that.
But then Alberta city or town.
But then on the flip side,
it's homes.
How can we get people to the point where it's, if you're just giving them home, is there any advancement for them personally, and also societally, is there any growth there?
I have an anecdote.
How do we find that middle ground? Christian.
Prepare for the anecdote.
A story going around where they had this homeless guy in like, okay, I think it was what Tommy's talking about. I think it was somewhere in Alberta, or even the States, where they put all their homeless people in housing because they did a study and they realized that it is cheaper by tens of thousands of dollars to just give someone a home.
Yeah.
And because they're going to be in and out of the hospital, shelter fees, all that stuff, right? So this guy kept leaving his house, and he kept leaving his house. They kept finding him sleeping outside, like being homeless, and they kept just bringing him back to his house. And eventually he stayed there, and then eventually he got a job, and then eventually he was like a not normal person again. But, he was a human being again. Like I assume. Yeah,
oh boy, slippery slope there.
Wow.
Those people are animals on the street.
But it makes a lot of sense though. You have a roof over your head and a bed to sleep, and it's completely
societal definition where it's like you've got a home, you've got a job, so you're contributing, and I'm using the air quotations.
Well, it's not that there's purpose; it's meaning, right? He has meaning, and like human beings need shelter, food, water, meaning, and physical contact. Psychologically, we do. We will probably die without it.
Well, heck, a thing I see to agree with you on that, like to give you kudos to that point. Like working in the shelter, you've seen people who have gotten housed, but then all their friends are street involved. Their community is street involved, or in the shelter, or in various spots, and then they'll end up leaving their house, not staying there, and then losing their housing because while we've ship them, it's like, we got your house, that's great, and that is, but
they don't have a support system.
They don't have a support system. They don't have a community anymore, and that's what people really need.
Really need. Yeah, people need purpose and like a sense. I mean, like people. What I'm realizing is that every person, I don't think they want to be part of like a group that has a purpose, right? And not be judged on what they look like or how old they are or their gender. They just want to be judged on the strength of what they contribute to that group, and I guess how willing they are to participate with the group, right? And I think that's missing for a lot of people. Like a lot of people, there's no community. I mean, you're living in you live in a building with like 500 people or 1,000 people or whatever. I mean, you're living mere feet away from someone, a wall's dividing you, but feet, and you don't have any. You're alone. You're living alone. Like you're living in a vertical city, but you're alone. Yeah. And it's just we weren't designed to live like that, right? I mean, that's not how we came to be. That's not how nature has designed us.
Right. We are social beings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, Terrible, terrible time to be alive.
every day I pray for death.
And like it's interesting
What's
that
the new Avengers movies before I die?
to me that's the interesting part, and I'm happy to jump into Avengers and comics.
Yeah, I was talking about Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, no,
Hold on,
keep
talk.
talking.
I haven't seen it yet.
Like,
I wanna
it's
see it.
Oh, well, we
interesting.
can't talk about it then.
Well, no, we're definitely fine.
Absolutely.
Tommy, you'll just sit here plugging your ears.
La, 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 la.
No, like it's interesting that is the attitude where it's how much do you see online where it's like, come on, it's 2017, we should be beyond this.
Yeah.
And to me, that's an annoying sentiment. It's true.
We can't get
We
beyond
should,
human nature, though.
but we're not. And then you're on one hand, it's like it's an awful time to be alive, but then it's like, nah, it's also it's a great time to be alive.
Technologically, it's fantastic.
where it's,
at least
like,
best time to be alive that we're aware of.
women and people in general across the class spectrum have more rights than ever.
Yeah.
In Canada, we have access to universal, like relatively free healthcare.
There's less disease than there's ever been.
There's less diseases.
The poor are less poor than they've ever been. It's,
yeah.
People have more rights than they've ever had.
Yeah.
I mean, there's terrible things happening, but
I mean, you can focus on the like how too much people are into drugs. You can focus on how many people are homeless. You can focus on all the negative stuff. And I'm not saying we ignore that.
you know how I would solve the drug problem? I would legalize and regulate all
Everything.
of it. Treat it as not a legal issue, because I don't think it's a moral issue if you do drugs. I don't think that you're doing something wrong. It's not morally wrong. It's it's not good for you, and like that's
it's more of a mental health issue than a
yeah.
There is a lot of ties.
It's
Yeah.
not a criminal issue. It shouldn't be. And here's my point. Like I never used to have sympathy for people who did something like heroin or crack, because I'm like, you know what it's going to do to you.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you choose to do that? It's like walking up in front of a van or a truck or whatever, right? And then I thought, how, like, I can't even fathom what state of mind I would have to be in to make that decision. And then I just assume that those people are in that state of mind. So all that elicits from me at that point is empathy, like a terrible empathy. Right?
Did you ever read Kevin Smith's book Silent Bob Speaks, or look up online? He did a thing called Me and My Shadow. So it was like a 5-chapter thing, heartbreaking, about Jason Mewes and his struggle, increasing struggle with drugs, from like the period he'd known him from as a kid, because Mewes started getting into drugs around the time they did Clerks, through as he was writing that up until he wrote it up until Clerks 2, and it was just Mewes by the end of it was so dialed into heroin and all these other drugs, and for him it's which Smith was struggling with understanding. Like with Mewes, he was using just to feel normal. Like at that point, he was well beyond the lethal dosage point, but he had developed such a tolerance to all the things he was on that he wasn't even getting high. He was just at that point to function to feel normal.
Yeah.
So, like, I might not fully agree where I think there should be some punishment, but there definitely needs to be a drastic reform in how you respond. Like somebody shouldn't get arrested and jailed for having a minimal amount of marijuana on them.
No,
Like
absolutely.
if there's a clear amount,
if you're moving a truck,
over 16.
yeah. Like if you're moving a truck, if you've got a trunk full, like, you don't need that for yourself.
No.
There is a clear intent to
a trunk full of marijuana?
Yeah.
Well, you're just helping the people.
or you just went to Costco.
Our government,
if there's an intent to distribute, like traffic, then I think that should be a criminally enforced law, especially once it's become legalized.
Well, yeah. Especially once
once it's legal.
It's having like a trunk. Well, I mean, you can make the argument like, okay, what if you have a trunk full of liquor, right? Like, I'm having a party.
No, and
right?
Yeah.
Which
why is that
if
absolutely?
you have a trunk full of cigarettes, that's a different thing, right? Isn't that sort of a different thing?
And that's where
I think they get suspicious on you when.
And that's where I'm saying, like, with some of this stuff, I think laws are black and white, and there's good in that, but there's not as black and white. There needs to be some wiggle room. So in drug laws and arrests and all that, there needs to be a lot more reform in those laws. Instead of throwing a guy like a struggling addict in jail, no. Get them to a place that can friggin' help.
Help them, man.
Clean them up, yeah.
Help them.
No, yeah, I mean,
Absolutely.
you can't. The government shouldn't decide what is morally right? Like they should. I mean, they should make laws based on, I guess, it's weird. It's so weird, right?
There's a catch-22 because as a society we need laws that have morality in there.
I mean, we equate it. We equate
Right.
morality with some laws, right? I mean, like don't murder someone. I mean, but that's obvious. Most people don't want to murder people, right?
Most people.
Well, they won't. They do maybe, but they
Sitting
won't
across
act
from
on
you
it.
for the last few minutes. I don't know.
No, I mean, you can. I mean,
Gosh, Mike.
you can make the libertarian argument that everyone has the right to do with their body what they want, right? And if you ask me, I mean, look what happened when alcohol was outlawed, right? I mean,
Prohibition.
Yeah.
That was a very deadly time to be alive, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we know that once you legalize and regulate, some substance like that, not only is the government going to make money if people choose to do it, not only are people not going to just go out and do it because it's legal and because they can easily get it. I mean, if you want heroin, you can get it in prison, right? So
That's how Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah, I mean, if you can't keep drugs outside of the tightest, most efficient, most advanced prison system in the world, you can't keep that for society, right? So, I think you're gonna have a lot more success in terms of tax dollars and in terms of productivity if you just treat it as a mental health issue. Because, like I said, what state of mind does someone have to be in to make that decision? That's terrible, right?
And it's really interesting in the countries that have legalized,
And
regulated, decriminalized
Yeah.
all drugs. Like Portugal, for example, they've seen their levels of addiction go down, their levels of
Right.
crime go down
Drastically.
That's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's directly correlated to the fact that these drugs are legal now. People aren't using them as much.
And
Yeah.
prostitution too. I think
Yeah.
I mean, if women choose to do that, I mean, it's not what I mean, if they're gonna do it no matter what. It's the oldest profession, right?
But if it's regulated properly,
Yeah,
it's not like
carpentry's
just
pretty old.
some guy forcing someone
Yeah, you can
to do
protect
it.
women.
If it's regulated,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's their choice to do it. It's actually kind of
I'll-
empowering. It's like being a
I'll-
stripper. You're
I'll
taking
be
advantage
honest,
of the man,
like,
not them taking advantage of you.
My opinion of it is something must have gone wrong, and I don't think I don't see how anyone can enjoy doing that, even if it is their
Yeah.
choice.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it's their choice, it's their choice. Like we can't control another human being's
A lot of
behavior,
people don't
right?
enjoy their job, though.
It
Yeah,
may be their
well,
choice, but
but
it may be their choice, but they may feel like
Especially-
they have no other choice. You
Yeah.
know what I
That's the
mean?
thing.
And that's,
the
like-
thing, right?
Yes.
I'll be honest, I'm not a fan of drugs. Like you guys know that.
No.
I would have
Nor
never guessed.
no.
If you can tax
That's it.
prostitution,
I'm
Yeah.
leaving this house of
You can-
blocks.
you can funnel that money into
back this.
supporting women. So
That's
it's like,
what-
hey, come register
That's
with
not
us.
sugar.
But here's all these options if you don't want to do this.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We'll give you classes.
No,
We'll do
and
this,
so
we'll do that.
here's where I appreciate discussion, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of drugs nor prostitution. It's not, neither are ones that I'd be like, let's decriminalize. But I'm hearing your points and I'm like agreeing with those.
Yeah.
Like I don't personally, to me, I'm like, I don't think prostitution should be a career path. It
No.
would be,
No, absolutely.
let's
No,
get
no,
people
that's-
the
that's
heck
not-
out of that.
That's not
But
included.
But
it shouldn't be.
instead,
Yeah.
instead
control
of
parenting, right?
no, and instead of throwing everyone under the bus, instead of like let's arrest you, it's like no, let's do something where let's get rid of the sex trade because who willingly is like, oh, I'm bored today. Oh, I know, I'm just gonna get into prostitution.
Well, what woman is sitting around thinking that, right? I mean, let's be honest.
I mean-
and we've all had the thought from time to time. I mean,
I don't know. But in another
Sometimes I
vein,
think-
I mean, think of it this way: if they're gonna have sex with somebody anyway, they're just gonna have sex with somebody. But if they're maybe a girl's looking at somebody's gonna give me $500 just to have sex with me.
yeah.
You know. Again, I don't
It's
necessarily.
terrible that that's like that's the glass ceiling you're looking at.
No, I mean, okay, it could be more. I just threw a random number out there, but
I don't think it was about the number, but anyway.
I know.
Oh
I
no.
know.
Oh,
But it's
no.
just like it's an easy way to make a few bucks.
Yeah, well, that's something for
Right,
which you have to have empathy, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, who would make? I mean, generally, who wouldn't want to make that decision? It just doesn't seem like someone who cares about themselves would make that decision. And you got to imagine that that's likely the product of a bad parenting.
Or someone
Or
feeling
no, yeah,
trapped, or
yeah,
no
yeah.
parenting,
No
or
other choice. Is like I
Yeah.
was saying. No other
Yeah.
choice.
So, I mean, if that's the choice they're going to make, that's the choice they're going to make. But, like, we might as well. We've done it this way for so long, and it's clearly not working.
Yeah.
right?
yeah. Even if it's not a let's swing the 100% the other way, it's definitely time to look at and reforming laws and how we're handling stuff.
Yeah, everything.
Yeah.
All the things.
I mean, you get to take the crime element of it by having brothels. That's how you regulate it.
That is, well, anyway, yeah. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot. But hey, you know what? You know, it's a good movie.
So about Thor Ragnarok.
It's supposed to be a pop culture podcast.
There's this one scene where I think it's right where he realizes
in Thor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So where he
I don't know if we're still talking about prostitution or not. Okay.
where
In
he
Thor.
realizes, okay, so Hera has broken his hammer, which you saw in the trailers.
Yeah, that's not a spoiler.
No. And spoilers. So
I've never watched the trailers.
She breaks his hammer.
Oh,
So
That's on you.
That's me. There's trailers. I didn't.
There's so many trailers that I can't watch.
Like
I refuse to watch.
I only watched the first Thor Ragnarok trailer back when it first day it came out, and completely cleaned since then.
The only trailers I'm actually watching are Star Wars.
Sorry to usurp your.
I had to.
Sorry to usurp your thing.
Well, this story is untouchable. It will always come back.
So I'm not letting this
the
go.
credit.
Yeah, so there's this one scene where
the credit I gotta give Star Wars, and it's so frustrating to me that nobody else has done this. Like, their trailers don't spoil their movies. Like, I've seen enough.
They even trick you into things.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're being
like,
very deceptive
I've
with
seen
their
enough. I've seen enough movies where now, for the most part, spoilers don't bother me. With the exception of, I just saw Murder on the Orient Express, which is actually pretty fun. It's a good flick.
Yeah, I like a good murder mystery.
Yeah,
You know?
and the whole thing was,
trailer looked good.
like, the nice thing about it was I didn't get to the ending before there. Like, they did a good job, and the trailer didn't advertise it for what it was, because it looks a lot more hokey when it's actually a lot more fun.
It looks like a game of Clue.
Like, it looks like a game of Clue when it's got more of a murder mystery involved. That trailer didn't spoil it. But for other movies, you can, if you've seen enough of them and you know the structure of how they make movies, you get to the ending before it friggin' shows up.
Yeah.
So spoilers don't ruin things for me anymore. But the Star Wars trailer for Episode 7, it didn't tell you this is going to be A New Hope a second time. And all the shots were within the first friggin' half hour of the movie, with the exception of one. So you had no idea going in. Same with Rogue One.
Even Spider-Man actually did a really good job with their trailers.
Yeah.
I mean, that spoilers, I guess. But
No, that movie's been out for months. That's on them.
I know. But that boat scene where he's sitting there like trying to hold the boat together with his wedge, like that in any other movie that would have been like in the third act.
Yeah.
And yet they're like, no, that's first act right there. Like
yeah.
This is so much more that they didn't show in the movie. I just like beautiful trailer.
I just
Godzilla, same thing, beautiful trailer.
And the new Star Wars trailers, the thing, like, I'm giving them credit, is they're keeping you guessing. Like, did you see the most recent
I haven't
one?
watched them. Nope.
So the
You've not
most
seen any of
recent.
We sat in the theater, and he put the coat over
I
his
put a coat over my head and covered my ears and went la 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 la. And my coat is really hot, so I came up. Like, Christian was nice enough to tap me on the arm after it was finished. I thought he was faking me out so I'd see something. But when I finally came up, I had sweat running down my face.
Oh my gosh!
Because the stress of it and the heat.
That's like passed out.
Mike's dead.
Like, the credit for them, though, is
Just
less. I don't think it's going to be like the Force Awakens trailer was, where I've got no doubt that those shots are happening, like, well after the first half hour. But it's not enough to get, like, yes, you've got an idea of the story, but you don't know the story.
Even
you
then,
don't know where it's.
Big rope-a-dope.
You don't. They quite
Big
possibly are. Like, you don't know the story, and then friggin'. How did Batman Superman come out and spoil? Like, there was the second trailer or the first trailer.
The whole movie.
Where you saw the whole movie, because the end of it's like, oh, it's Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, and here's not Doomsday showing up, and you're like, why am I gonna sit through the first 2 hours of this?
The only thing they left out was Martha.
And
why did you say that name?
They should have left that out of the movie to begin with.
That happened to me at work. Somebody like mentioned the name Martha, and I'm at work. I almost said, "Why did you say that name?" But then I had to stop myself and say, "Well, I'm at work. I can't do that. I can't yell. Why did you say that name? Why did you say that name?"
We'll start flipping everything over on your way over to that person.
Yeah.
Oh man. So you're saying about Ragnarok?
Yeah, it's a Ragnarok.
Yeah. Okay.
Hello.
So early on in the movie, Thor throws his hammer at Hera, and like she like grabs it, all like a cool person.
I don't want to hear
And,
that. I'll go grab my phone.
a pretty
gotta go.
cool
Gas
cat.
station down the end of the street.
Like
Yeah.
a cool
Back in like 5
cat.
minutes.
All right.
Like a bidet. So I was cute enough to get away with it, right?
Yeah.
A bidet?
Yeah, that's what I thought he said, but that's not what he said.
What did he say?
That's literally what I said. So
That had no pajama.
Oh.
Oh, that's a good one. That's also adorable.
It's more ethnic than adorable. But, yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Is that offensive? Well, I've crossed the line.
Well, I was definitely triggered.
No.
Did I say? Oh,
Did I say something offensive?
Who said the offensive
This
thing?
new game. We should have bets. Tommy. Who said the offensive thing, Tommy, when you come back? Let's see who you
Please
choose.
go on.
Well, we don't know, so we don't know the answers.
Yeah, we still don't know.
No, I'm not sure. Anyways,
Okay, so she grabs this dude's hammer and just crushes it, right?
Yeah.
And he's all like, "Dang, right? That was not supposed to happen. That has never happened. I thought
Yes.
that could not happen."
I
Yeah.
am verily.
But then it did happen. And so, so then later on, he's like, "Oh no, I have all these like zombie soldiers that I gotta like mess up, right?" He's on that like gigantically long rainbow
The
bridge.
Rainbow Bridge.
yeah.
And yeah, I like that.
Sorry, Mario Kart just had to.
Oh.
It was really, it's really cool. So then like they're all coming at him, and then all of a sudden he has this like weird moment where he sort of goes in like a fugue state, I guess, and he visits Odin in like the field of reeds.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he's like, you're not the god of hammers, right?
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
not thunder. The hammer was only there to
Yeah.
concentrate and like whatever, restrict your power. And so he comes back, and then he like, lightning. He jumps up, and then like lightning hits him,
Yeah.
and then it's like this panoramic 300-esque shot where he's going slow mo through the air, and Immigrant Song is playing, and it's
Yeah.
the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
Like he's just like taking peeps out with lightning and stuff, right? And it's just like. I was like, wow, this is like lowest common denominator, but it's awesome.
Well, yeah.
Somewhere I'm looking forward to the fan edit or like the YouTube cut where they throw in the Mortal Kombat theme just because
Oh, yeah.
a joke is like he's like he looks like Raiden. Oh no, the one from the movie where it's like Mortal Kombat. Yep.
Yeah, everyone says that there's no better use of Immigrant Song than in that scene.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
it is
No, and it
absolutely
was-
perfect.
Perfect.
Like-
Viking, like they were.
And apparently
Yeah, the lyrics fit in
the
perfectly.
director had it planned ages ago.
Yeah.
And then he thought, "There's no way Marvel's going to get on board with this." And then
There's
when
no
he
way
showed
Zeppelin's
it,
going to grant.
there's
they
no
don't-
way
yeah.
Zeppelin's going to do it. And then Zeppelin's like loosening the reins about their songs getting used. And
Yeah,
then,
they're
Well, they
letting it.
stole all of them anyway, so.
Don't start that.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm just speaking the truth.
Stole
How
or
is this
made
more
better.
controversial than anything that
It's
we've
not stealing if you make it better.
Wait. So who? Sorry, I'm just getting sidetracked. Who did what?
Led Zeppelin stole most of their songs.
There,
It's
not most. There
yeah,
are a
most.
lot of
Most.
songs, especially
Yeah.
on the first album.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And the
Stairway to
second,
Heaven?
the first and
Do
second.
they own the
No,
rights? to
Stairway
it,
is
or-
not stolen.
Have you heard like that video where they
So-
played the end of that one band song and it's literally
Spirit?
just Stairway to Heaven?
It's Taurus?
I don't know what the name
Wait,
is.
no,
That's
no.
the one
so,
they're on trial for.
Oh, okay.
But that's,
So
They're
how did
that's,
they-
literally
it's a load of
on trial in
malarkey.
court.
So
It's
how did
malarkey.
they like?
What, you're the lawyer?
How did they steal
Yes.
it? Just because only comparison I can have is Metallica, where up until recently most of their back catalog was owned by Elektra, but now they own all their rights, which actually to me gave them a lot more sympathy to the whole Napster thing, where it's like they are actually in control of their music. For them, it was a future investment.
The industry sold out the artist because they colluded with the streaming services so they could get like equity and stake in their business.
Yes.
So they're selling artists music for like nothing, right?
Yeah.
And that was their way of getting in there and like becoming buddies with the streaming service. So
I smell your passion.
yeah, man, it really makes me angry. They rob people. There's like no like there was never money in art, but there's definitely no money now. Like
Yeah, there's no money in media sales
Yeah.
or streaming. There's
So where like. This is a whole side topic that I'm actually interested in getting to.
other things we were talking about.
where'd you get that from?
So
Guy on the street.
but with Metallica, with now they own the rights to their songs. So now a lot more Metallica than just Enter Sandman is actually getting into trailers, into films. Like the Amazing Punisher trailer uses one so excellently that if it was owned by another party, I'm not sure that if Elektra owned it, I'm not sure Marvel would have ended up buying it. So that's where I'm curious as to like, does Zeppelin own the rights to their music
Yeah.
or okay,
Oh yeah, Jimmy Page is like he's inscrutable.
okay,
Yeah, they're all very
He's-
business savvy.
Paige is very careful with money.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
like Gene
Tight.
Simmons.
Yeah, I
very
I
tight
hate
with his
Gene
money.
Simmons, though, but
He's a
I
little
mean,
less than
good on him for capitalizing on everything that he has.
So Tommy, you're gonna hate us because we're jumping back to Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah, we kind of went off track.
We
while
got
were-
sidetracked on the music rights and everything.
All right, whatever.
Okay, hold on.
so-
Tommy sat down and opened a Red Bull, and I have no idea where he got it from.
Did you get it from the gas station?
Oh, there's a gas station. There's a guy in the street.
All right.
He's just handing out Red Bulls.
That was the funny thing.
So-
It's just like, where'd you get that
Where'd you
from?
get that
There's a
from?
guy down the street.
If we can, as
Red Bull
spoiler-free as
Yeah.
possible,
He's got a garbage bag. He's just whipping at people.
which I'll say, like, as spoiler-free as possible, where, in this case, Thor's
No.
been out for less than a week.
Oh,
So-
yeah, I guess we shouldn't spoil it for the
I,
audience.
I, I think it's fair
10
to go
days.
spoiler-free. It's been out 10 days.
10 days.
To me, after a month or two, that's on y'all. Like, so then it's spoiler-free and I'm not tagging anything.
Yeah, I say a month is a good cutoff
Yeah.
point.
Also,
Yeah.
that
Well, I
said,
did say spoilers before I said the other thing.
That said, I don't care too much about
No,
spoilers.
but we'll
I'll see it
in
anyway.
case people listening haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
How'd you guys like it?
Oh, that was a good time.
Yeah.
It was a good time. It was.
Why didn't you, like, minutes ago?
I don't want to build it up.
Yeah, now
I don't want to build it up for Tom and make it seem so
Yeah.
good that it's not as good as it was to someone.
I'm
who hadn't. But
I'm
yeah,
not
it was
even the bad
it
ones,
was
I'm
it
gonna
was
love
a
them.
it was a good time. It was funny, maybe too funny at times where it should have been a little more serious.
Right.
But it
Yeah.
was a fun time.
IGN's review is like pretty vicious. I mean, they gave it like a 7.5 or something, but they were just like, dude, they paid lip service to characters that they should have fleshed out, and then like it's really weird that they sort of shoehorn the entire fate and destruction of Asgard.
Spoiler.
Well, that's not so. So I'll
in the
say
trailer.
that's not so much a spoiler because that's in the trailer.
Oh, it was, okay.
And anybody who doesn't know, I'll say now. Ragnarok is the end of all things. So in this movie, it's Asgard's comeuppance. Like,
It's not, you know, if you're ignorant and you don't understand what Ragnarok means,
You should.
If you know nothing of Norse mythology,
just do a quick Google search or ask your nerdy friend; they'll tell you.
But yeah. So that was sort of shoehorned against like Garbage Planet and Goldbluming, right? Like I don't.
Like the whole as I'm watching, because Jill and I kind of had a Thorathon, and I mentioned this in a blog post I had after where we revisited the first Thor movie, and I'm like, you know what, it's okay. Like the Thor movies have been really, to me, they're the most mediocre
Yeah, they're the weak links
of the
in the MCU.
See, I wouldn't even say they're the weak links. Because to me, I'm like, Iron Man 3 is the worst.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
It is
yeah.
the worst. And then you've got, so to me, I'm like, you've got Iron Man 3, and then you've got ones closer to it, and then you've got Winter Soldier. That is, to me, that is still the best Marvel movie. The closest to it is Civil War.
I like Civil War more.
And then,
I do like Civil War more than Winter
like, you've
Soldier as
got,
well.
fair enough. You've got those two, and then the most middle ground are the Thor movies because they're pretty dull.
Yeah, actually, I was listening to Hollywood Babylon with Kevin Smith and Ralph
Yeah.
Garman, and it was interesting because Kevin had seen Thor Ragnarok at that point, and even Chris Hemsworth he tweeted out that it was because of Kevin Smith's reviews of Thor that he was like, I need to change all of this.
Yeah.
Like he went to Kevin Feige and had a conversation about how to change the character and make him more fun because his solo movies were dull and dry. Essentially,
They were, yeah.
He's amazing in the Avengers.
And then-
he's so funny, he's charismatic, but in his standalone movies,
But in revisiting it, like you
kinda
actually,
boring.
in revisiting it, because I saw some people be like, in Ragnarok, this is way out of left field. And rewatching them, I'm like, not so much. Like his character was much more understated. But he did have some underlying comedy that he kept bringing up.
Yeah,
And
and I
then I
think-
can't throw the first movie under the bus because that first scene with Anthony Hopkins as the worst dad ever, like that is the continual theme of the Thor franchise. Odin's a jerk. Like, worst dad ever. But that first scene with him where he finds out that he's a frost giant is just amazing. It's so well acted.
Wait.
Loki's a frost.
Loki,
Not Thor.
yeah,
Loki,
Loki's dad
that
is a
Loki
frost
is a frost giant. Like,
Yeah.
because he finds out, like, he was essentially taken
Yes, from Jotunheim.
from
As-
Jotunheim
as a
as a
hostage
child.
because
Like, he
they
was an
won the war.
abandoned child.
How does he not look like
It's something they don't revisit.
I think it's part of his trickster powers that he puts on a fake face.
Like, how did he not know?
No,
because he was taken so young.
Yeah,
it's almost like a brainwashing sort of thing.
No, but Mike was like, he has this trickster face. I'm like,
he
didn't consciously put that on.
No. It's something they never really explained that I would have loved more explanation on, like revisiting it, where it's like he realizes because the frost giant like grabs him, and when everybody else's skin is getting frozen and flaking off, his just goes frozen. He's like, hold up, what?
Yeah, it actually starts to, that's when it actually starts to
turn
into frost.
And then later he starts to turn blue.
Yeah.
He starts to turn blue like the frost giant, but they never actually explain it. And then he's also very Asgardian in his powers, and he's the god of mischief. But then it's like, how would he get there? I'm just curious.
Who's his mom?
Some frost lady,
Smoking.
or however frost giants are born. You've got no clue.
Well, I thought maybe he was like a Hercules situation.
Just popped to the ground.
No. And then
no, that's not Hercules at all. It's kind of radish.
So then we rewatched Thor: The Dark World. Yeah. That gets it's actually pretty enjoyable.
Yeah.
Like it's not the best, but it's so much better shot than Thor 1. Thor 1 has better acting, but then Thor 2, when you get to Asgard, there's friggin' open shots where I'm like, this is what I want to see in Asgard. I want to see expanse, I want to see everything. In fights, I want to see wide shots, which so many of the shots were in close on Thor, and the first one, not trying to throw Kevin Braga under the bus, he did all right. But Phase 1, when you revisit Phase 1, it's not the best. With the exception of Iron Man 1, and I'll say Incredible Hulk. I like him,
right?
Yeah, but also when they got to be their own stories, they were better. That's why out of Phase 1, I tend to like Iron Man and the Incredible Hulk, flaws and all, the best, because they were really their own story, and the only setup was like in the post credits, and then when you got to Iron Man 2, which should have been Electric Boogaloo.
Oh yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Missed an opportunity there.
Such a missed opportunity. But Electric Boogaloo should be every
sequel.
And then Tokyo Drift should be every third.
Every third, absolutely.
I don't understand what's happening.
We're saying it should have been called Iron Man 2
Electric Boogaloo.
I understand that.
It would have been perfect.
Like if I just had a stroke. So like hearing words that are like not being replaced.
Especially with the arc reactor.
With the arc reactor. Or Guardians of the Galaxy 2 with the vibe they were going with Guardians. Like Guardians 2 Electric Boogaloo.
Okay, are you hearing Electric Boogaloo too?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So why? I thought like those words had replaced other words that you're saying.
I'm having a stroke right now.
No, why Electric Boogaloo?
Because it's just such an absurd title. Yeah. Because it was off of Brecken 2, which is like a nothing movie.
That was a breakdancing movie.
A breakdancing movie from the 90s.
Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah, but it's just such an absurd title to me, which is just fun. Where I'm like, if you attach it to every sequel, because sequels either have a number or an absurd second title.
Yeah, I like Tokyo Drift. I got that. I got how random that was.
No, so Electric Boogaloo, if you fit it with like almost any sequel, it works. To me, it makes the title better. Like Iron Man 2, Electric Boogaloo, I am so much more in to revisit that movie.
Is it because it rhymes?
I think that's a lot of
That's a part of it. That's a big part of it. But to me, it's also the randomness and where I'm like, this sounds fun.
It does sound fun.
Like, this sounds fun. Or Tokyo Drift, where I don't want a Bambi 3, but if you give me Bambi 3 Tokyo Drift, heck yeah, man. I'm in a heartbeat. It has my money.
It has to be like a really serious movie and then Tokyo Drift. Like Schindler's List 3. You skip 2 altogether. Schindler's List 3. Tokyo Drift.
There's so many things wrong but funny with that.
I was just trying to think of the most serious movie.
That was really good.
To revisit what you were saying about how people are saying like Ragnarok is so far in left field. And again, having not seen it, what I have noticed is and one thing I really respect about the Marvel movies is the evolution of their characters throughout the movies. I frequently, this is going to sound like bad, but I frequently go back and I watch all of the Marvel movies in chronological order, from like all of them. I have them all downloaded and I love it. I marathon through them in a couple of days. But you with Thor, especially though, you see the evolution of his character in the sense that he becomes more human, he becomes more fun, he becomes more animated and comedic, and so if this is more of a comedy than it is anything else, it's completely understandable to me.
And I'll be honest, part of me really wanted a serious Ragnarok story, like, because that's inherently a dark story.
Yeah, I wanted it to be
like I wanted a serious. I wanted a serious dark.
That's what we were saying.
A serious
it's about to
dark
get really
end times one,
Thor's
and then
die.
even
Everyone's
that little bit in Thor's magic jacuzzi scene from Avengers 2, where you see Idris Elba's Heimdall. Like, that's a very different Ragnarok than what we ended up with.
It sounded like a different language. Idris
Idris Elba's Heimdall.
You said it properly. No,
Okay.
It
was too close together?
No, I don't.
Just a lot of odd words.
He really is having a stroke.
How high are you?
Where it's just like it was a very different thing. But as much as I wanted that dark story,
it was funny.
And Ragnarok is great, and I love what we got. But after revisiting the first two Thor movies, I'm not sure they would have done the dark one well.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think they did justice to how they've done the characters, and I enjoy them for what they are. Yeah. How they had done them, I don't think they would have worked well in a serious dark movie as well as they did translating into like a straight up comedy. Where it was still great action set pieces, but it was more so than any other Marvel movie. It was like a comedy first, and then a comic book action movie.
Well, yeah, that's something that happens when you take something as like fantastical as like a comic book universe, and then try to bring it to live action and get these people to say lines that like if you got them to recite dialogue that was actually in the comics, it would be terrible, right? And it's weird because when you're reading it in the comic, it doesn't seem that bad.
No.
Like, when you're doing it, like it seems really gripping and fun, and it's awesome. And you don't notice it, but if you were like, if you had
it depends.
In
Like,
motion pictures,
I'd say, like, I agree with you for the most part. I'll say, with the exception of certain comics, like the DC did the animated version of The Killing Joke, which I know a lot of people didn't like because of the first 20 or 40 minutes. Which was a weird thing.
The liberties that they took with it were strange. But I still
that,
enjoyed it.
that front part, that was very liberties. But then the last 40 was like very true to The Killing Joke, and they were lifting dialogue straight up from it, and it sounded great.
It did. It absolutely did. I don't feel that it deserved an R rating though.
Well, it's
like when I heard that I was getting an R-rated version of The Killing Joke, I was super excited.
It's because of the misogyny in it.
But that's what they took liberty. That's what they added in, and all of a sudden, that's what made it an R.
But with The Killing Joke, I understand why they did it as a rating R, though. Like, even though it didn't have a bunch of swears and a lot of too much violence, because when you read that is a very R-rated comic book story, and it doesn't have those things. It reminded me, did you guys ever read X-Men God Loves Men Kills?
No.
It was the basis for X-Men 2. But if you were to ever do God Loves Men Kills, you'd have to do an R rating. And there's not a bunch of swears, there's no sex, there's nothing like that you associate with an R rating. But there's kids getting killed, even slightly off panel, but child violence.
Awesome.
Very serious subject, dark subject matter. So then with that, I'm like, that's why I like that they went there. To me, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, I just don't. I understand why they went there as well.
To me, I get why they went R. I'm like, you couldn't do this PG-13.
No, I mean, because of the Death in the Family, you need to do Death in the Family as an R as well.
Because of the implications of this stuff, where it's like, no, I don't think Gordon raped Barbara, but there's a lot of heavy implications. There's a lot of messed up stuff that happened in that story.
Gordon did?
No, Joker. Yeah, no. My bad, listener.
What version were you reading?
Yeah, no. Like the Joker. I don't think the Joker raped her or raped Gordon, because you can make the argument for both.
Yeah, I never got that impression when I was reading it.
No,
I never got that impression.
I thought that he spoiler, shot Barbara and stripped her down, stripped both of them down,
but then forcing a father to see a daughter like that, is just, you can't do that in a PG-13. You straight, to me, you can't.
No.
That is an R-rated story that you don't need the trappings of, like, your standard R-rated movie. Like, there's the rumor Disney's buying Fox, although right now they're kind of at a standstill. And
Yeah, they want X-Men back hard.
no, and like a big part of me wants that, but then at the same point, I want them to be willing to do R-rated movies.
Absolutely.
Deadpool can exist in a PG-13. He does in the comics. He does when he shows up in other people's comics.
Yeah.
It happens on the regular. That is a character that can exist in a PG-13. And you can have fun with, if his swearing gets bleeped out and he's getting ticked off, that feeds into his character.
Yeah, actually, I was going to vehemently disagree with you, and then that right there, the idea of Ryan Reynolds swearing, having it bleeped on screen when you're in a movie theater, and then him getting angry at that and talking to the audience, like.
And but the thing is, he does and works in an R-rated environment. I'm not taking that away, but I will argue if you say like Deadpool can only exist in an R-rated environment, that's not true.
No, not only.
The only time he's been in a straight R-rated environment was when he was under the Max imprint. Like in straight up comics, unless they like. Not the same as film ratings, but his comics aren't nearly as dark as they were in the Max rating. And so he exists in the comics within a relative like PG-13, AA-14, or UK-15, whatever. He exists in that environment already.
I figure if Deadpool can exist in like a non-rated R environment, then anybody can.
Yeah.
I'm starting to think like based on that too. Like why can't it be both? Why it's still Ryan Reynolds in both.
No,
but
exactly.
You have a PG-13 movie that you can take your kids to, but then there's and that maybe that one's the buddy flicks where
and that's where
else.
like
Deadpool
his own
movie is R,
if Deadpool shows up in Spider-Man, like he would it wouldn't be
suddenly
Spider-Man's dropping cuss words.
No, it'd be PG-13 version.
I'd want them to still be willing to do R-rated movies because you've got Logan, which you cannot tell that story in a PG-13. You can't. To me, you take out the flashing scene because that's, to me, it was unnecessary to begin with. It was just there for the sake of, hey, we're R, so let's show boobs for the sake of showing it. You can 5 seconds, you can cut it out. It doesn't impact the plot at all.
At all, yeah. It's not like there was a love scene and there were boobies.
No.
That to be said, I mean, like that story could have been told in a PG-13 manner. The only reason it was, I mean, what made it the R is that when he puts his claws in,
that's
you're actually
the language.
Language, yeah.
But for me, the violence of the movie, like I don't like violence for violence's sake. But in Logan, the violence was part of the story.
Yeah, no,
it was
is.
part of the character, but it was also like
their
whole thing with Logan was like, this is the end. So in this movie, more than any other X-Men movie, like death is a thing. If Logan slashes you, you're not coming back. Professor X isn't going to show up in a different body and then look like himself, which they never explain.
Yeah.
Like he's dead.
Yeah.
When Logan dies, he's dead. So the violence of seeing people like limbs slashed off, to me, I'm like, yes, this is a little bit jarring, but it's also with the story of like he's dead at the end of this. So in that movie, like death is a finality. That's the only comic book movie so far where it's like death is an absolute certainty. Since they've started paying more attention.
Watching that movie.
So
shivers down it was amazing.
Like with that, to me, you could not tell that story with the whole death as a final thing. In a PG-13, because at the end of it, it'd be like, okay, if he when will he be back? Because he's like characters have died before, whereas this, I'm like, no, he
could still
done.
die in a PG-13 friendly manner, though.
In the end, even though I knew it was like this is the last movie, and I know like they're being serious about it, I really expected his hand in the claw to pop out of the grave, pop out of the ground.
I was kind of waiting
for
that.
Like one middle finger or something, like one middle claw or something.
I was kind of waiting for that, but they really went with they restrained themselves with that.
Yeah.
That part.
Oh yeah, wait. That's what I wanted to say about Thor Ragnarok. Yeah. So when you take something that's so out of this world and outlandish, like topic matter, right? I think it's a great benefit to be self-aware.
Yeah.
Right? And they do that, and that's what makes it really, really funny. That was a really funny movie.
It was.
I laughed a lot.
No, it was genuinely funny. It wasn't like forced humor and like.
Yeah.
Like I saw it with Jill. We saw it twice, and she normally doesn't like comedy because comedy's different to everybody. No, I'm not throwing her under the bus. She'll be straight up. She's like
she's a very serious person.
She doesn't gravitate towards like standard comedy movies. She just doesn't find them funny. But then when you saw that clip, the clip released of Korg,
Quark's the best.
Yeah, no, she was like, it's just going to be the comic foil character, and those are never that well developed, and they're never genuinely that funny.
Well,
she's laughing hysterically during Korg.
Except the last one, yeah.
Like, Korg was amazing.
Yeah.
And the movie was genuinely funny.
Mm-hmm.
And then I loved the Hulk in that movie.
Yeah, I think they maybe cut to Korg?
Yes.
Like the company? Yeah, Korg. I think they maybe
like
cut
the
to a little
keyboard
bit too much, right? Like there were some points where they undercut
The ending thing.
Yeah.
No, I get that. I can see both sides of that, because at one point when I saw it the second time, knowing the joke was coming, I'm like, you can still feel what the characters are feeling, and then still find the comedy in the thing.
Could you though? Even before it, like before the joke, could you? I mean, I'm just saying. It was fun. It was really fun.
I with me, my problem is Doctor Who wrecked me and how I watch shows, where now I'm way too emotionally invested in fictitious characters.
Oh, yeah.
Which I find Doctor Who does that. Like, it did that for me, where at first I'm like, oh, this is a little sci-fi show. And then within 5 episodes, I'm like emotionally invested in like these fictitious characters, because they're developed so well.
Yeah.
I've still never watched a single episode.
And then as stuff happens, especially when you got to the end of series 2, like, my day was ruined by the end of the their Doomsday episode.
Yeah.
Like, I was in a bad mood.
Well, that must be terrible, especially like for a show where the main character, the star, gets switched out every so often, right? Like, it's just like, whoa, I just got attached to this new guy.
No, but it for the most part, with the exception of Eccleston, because he was only there for series 1, everybody else has generally been there 3-4 years. So it's not like a rotating thing of per season, where in like Power Rangers or Super Sentai, where it's like, oh, new season, new cast, or that kind of thing, where no continuous bit.
It just seems like it's weird when people freak out over like a new one as opposed to the old one, where it's just like, well, dude, this is the show you signed up for. You know this is happening, right?
I'm
it's like getting mad at women. It's like getting mad at Black Mirror for being anthological or something.
Yeah,
like
everyone being different.
Wait a minute. None of these characters were in the last episode.
Yes.
What happened to those people?
Which, and I think there's room for that. I haven't watched it yet, but Star Trek Discovery, right? Like,
ooh,
I've been watching the Orville.
I really wanted Trek Discovery to be an anthology series, especially as I was hearing more about it, and the more I hear about it, just because they're like, oh, it's going to take place like 10 minutes. As an exaggeration, before the original series, and then it's like, how are you going to do that? Like, Enterprise, everybody complained about, because they're like, oh, you're so trapped in continuity and all the setup.
Enterprise was amazing. They did what the movies did, where they're like, oh, we're in another universe now. Like, we changed dimensions.
Well, yeah, they did that with the like the one season. I think it was the third season. But then the second season has one of my favorite episodes, but I have a love-hate relationship with it, where they did the Borg one, where I'm like, cool, because I love the Borg, and as much as Voyager ruined them, like lowered their menace, they're just a great sci-fi enemy and Trek's best enemy. Like, so I love them coming back.
It's so sassy.
But then it created this.
Well, clearly the best. So.
It created this very annoying predestination. Like, paradox loop with the Q, and their whole thing is like, no, they exist at, like, the Q is an entity that exists outside of the rules of time and space. So how are they trapped within that? And that's where I'm like, just set it later. Just set it after Trek 09, like 5 minutes after Spock went through the black hole. Because to me, that's interesting, where it's like, oh crap, Romulus is gone. There's a huge void. And Spock's gone and all that. Like, or do an anthology where you visit the less periods, where you can do like a 10-episode run before friggin' the original series, and then one from Generations, because even though that's a bad movie, it's still between the first Trek and then Next Gen. Like, do that. Do an anthology or something. I got sidetracked. We've been doing this for like an hour and a half.
Hour and a half. Yeah, I was just looking at it. Yeah.
Best podcasts are long.
I was gonna say, though, I was really taken aback by the uproar and I guess you could call it backlash for the new Doctor Who being a woman. That really disturbed me.
Yeah,
I was like, what is wrong with that? What is wrong with you?
And for me, I didn't get that. Like, I I know some people get upset when you gender swap or race swap a character for no reason. Mm-hmm. But Fantastic Four, the most recent movie that was awful. Mm-hmm. Like, people were upset about Johnny Storm getting switched, where I'm like, dude's a good actor. And to me, they explained it well enough. And it's not something that's so ingrained in his character where it's like he has to be white.
Yeah.
But the Doctor especially, because they've already established it's a Time Lord, you regenerate, you're a new person, you're a new personality. Yeah. They have the memories. That's a character that can.
Yeah.
So if they can, why not?
Right.
So I'm with you where I'm like, I don't get the uproar.
No.
Where even earlier in the show, during I think it was a series finale. Yeah, series 8 or 9 finale. The Doctor killed the Time Lord knowing he was about to regenerate, and he regenerated from an old white man to a black woman. And I'm like, you can do that. So
it seems like everybody on each side of the aisle would be sort of
so I'm just kind of like, so why not? When a character can, why not?
Yeah. Why not include everybody?
A friend of mine was talking to some friends. I never finished Luke Cage, just because I've got one more. I
didn't finish Iron Fist.
I've got one more episode that I want to finish because I've been it's kind of split up into 2 arcs within one season.
Yeah, which is why I loved it. It was
and then so for me, I know Cottonmouth. I think he's in one more episode, and that's the character I'm interested in. I've heard the second guys, and so I'm like, all right, I'm going to finish that off.
Yeah, Diamondback.
Yeah, he was just annoying.
They did Diamondback wrong.
And then the guy playing Cottonmouth was awesome. Yeah. It's just
he's good.
Luke Cage. As much as there's strengths to the show, for me, I'm like, it took too long. Its pacing was off. I'm down for a slow pace and a slow burn, but as long as stuff is still happening during that slow burn, it was a little bit too much of a slow burn, and then probably didn't need a run of 12.
Yeah, 10 would have been better.
Iron Fist could have been done in 8.
Yeah. I think I was done with Iron Fist by episode 5.
But then, Iron Fist has its own problem. But then the thing what I was getting to, I didn't finish it, but my buddy Steve, pastor at Forward, he was talking to a friend, and they're not super into comics, but then they were like, did you see Luke Cage? And it was just actually having that the identification of someone to identify with on the screen in a superhero role, and as a black character who's for the most part a morally good guy, who's just trying to do the right thing. They love that. So
I like that too.
I'm starting to understand that more, where I'm like, yes, representation is a good thing.
It's a good thing.
It's a great thing, but do we don't just make it let's just make Tony Stark a black guy out of nowhere.
Yeah,
or a black girl.
Or a black girl. If you Spider-Man when they did 2099 and then the Ultimate Run, Miles Morales is his own character. Yeah. It wasn't just we've just replaced Peter Parker with a black guy. Yeah. And then Miguel O'Hara in the 2099 one run, an Irish Hispanic guy. They didn't just make him Peter Parker. He was very much his own character.
Pedro Parker.
You're all Spider-Man, right? No. It's a very good way of just making a black Peter Parker.
Or they've got Silk now, where it's not let's just replace Spider-Man with a woman. It's here's a character with a very similar power set, but she's her own character.
Well, I wanted to comment on. Okay, so if someone on the outrage over the Human Torch being cast as black, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if you're giving these people the benefit of the doubt that they're not racist, I think the thing is do you like someone who kisses up to the boss? Does anyone like that person?
No, I hate myself.
No. So I think it's like that. It's it just seems transparent and unnecessary. And I think that there's a large, probably a decent amount of people who will use that as an excuse to mask their racism.
Yeah.
Personally, I think it's such a minefield that I'm just do whatever you want, right?
Yeah,
I don't want to have to go through the thought process to have an opinion on this.
Yeah,
scares the crap out of me. So I'm
just and that's that.
I'm trying to remember.
That's where I wish to harking back to civil discourse, just to be
Well, it's not even it's just scared about Yeah. I don't know. I mean, what you said, man. Representation is good.
Yeah,
and I really don't see a problem with it in terms of I would not get angry and be I'm boycotting a movie over this director, or I tweeted the director. I wouldn't do anything like that. And I mean, like I said, okay.
which
Just summarize.
to summarize,
Yeah,
I don't know why I started talking.
like I know some people were
and
like
now I'm leaving.
really against Idris Elba becoming James Bond. And I'm like, I don't
That'd be
get
cool.
that.
I mean,
'Cause
he'd
he'd be
be
an
awesome.
amazing Bond.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, like, it'd be difficult to do it.
You don't have automatic doors here.
I think it'd be. I think it'd be difficult to do it now because Skyfall went. To me, Skyfall would have been a great way to introduce like Bond is a title that like and a name and an identity that everybody assumes when they become the role of 007, and then they went out of their way to be like, this is James Bond.
Yeah.
So now when eventually he is recast, either I love it as Idris Elba or Michael Fassbender.
Oh yeah.
Those two, those are my choices.
Yeah, he would be a good Bond.
Both would be amazing because Fassbender as Magneto, so much of him he was off doing Bond stuff.
Oh yeah. In First Class, he was James Bond.
Yeah, and then even a little bit in Days of Futures Past where he's like sneaking around the train yard. I'm just like, just
Oh yeah.
be Bond, man.
Yeah, please.
I'd even be okay with what's his name, Jeffrey Dean Morgan as a James Bond character. He's just so he's got that face and that voice about him.
I
He's
want
very
him,
slick. And
I want him to be Batman in Flashpoint Paradox.
yes,
Which-
Because he's already set up to be
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
like
Which-
perfect.
Okay.
Oh.
Why don't we say we're going to
my
cap
brain's
this at
flooded.
2 hours because we're at 1:35.
How dare you limit
We're still going.
Yeah, okay, whatever.
Let's hit the 3 mark.
Or we don't have to.
Joe
Yeah, no,
Rogan.
we'll just keep going.
Yeah, Joe Rogan always goes to like
yeah.
3 hours. It's like some of the best podcasts I've ever listened
I listen to like a lot of Rhett and Link just because I like their Good Mythical Morning, and then they've got Ear Biscuits, and their mark is normally 80 minutes, which we've cleared already. So
Oh yeah.
You know, Monica and I were talking the other day about she wanted to watch a video and it had what's his name, Jean Yumeshi in it, and
Yeah.
she was watching a video about Gord Downey.
Okay. Yeah.
Tragically hip frontman who just passed
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
And she's like, it was a really, really good interview. And she's like, I forgot, like, after the whole thing, that he's actually a really good interviewer. And she's like, I really don't know how, like, I feel about it because it's like, and I was like, well, that's an interesting, like philosophical game you can play with yourself. Like,
Yeah.
the perspective on things that this person has given you, or the manners in which they've enlightened you to things, or provided you, whatever, like a perspective. Is that separatable from who they are and what they do as a person, right?
Yeah. Like, do you
think
do you
so.
have to stop appreciating the work? Like,
Yeah.
can you is Kevin Spacey now terrible in Seven? Can you not watch Seven anymore? No.
If
I mean,
anything,
yes, I
he's
can
better
watch
in
Seven.
now.
Oh.
It kind of puts American
You know,
Beauty
he's
in
a
a
terrible
different way.
person.
What's that? Oh, American Beauty.
Kind
Yeah.
of puts American Beauty in a whole
They got
different
a real
light. but-
psychopath
That's
that plays
the-
it.
But no, but yeah, that raises the question: like, can you
The
no-
humor's getting dark.
Can you,
kidding.
can you
I'm
no
kidding.
longer
I'm kidding.
appreciate the work when the person associated with it is outed as
Like,
being
I still like
less
Michael
than
Jackson's
desirable?
music.
Well, and that's
You know?
there's a
Yeah.
I have no problem with
Yeah,
Michael
Michael
Jackson's
Jackson's
music.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no, but like the catch-22 of it.
No.
The catch-22 is you as a consumer, can you enjoy this person's work? But then, like in terms of movies or music, unless the person's dead, like they're still they make money off of that.
Yeah.
And they make credit.
Their estate still does when they're dead.
There's credit there. So then you can boil it down to, and that's where it's the discomfort. Like, yes, can you appreciate the person's performance and their art and what they're saying and disattach it, but then are you okay with financially contributing to that person?
Well, that's where I think like maybe there should be if you're convicted of say you are an actor or whatever, you make money off people watching movies, but you are convicted of having raped somebody. Well, now you or your estate no longer receives financial compensation for that movie or anything like that.
Yeah, it goes to the victim, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like, well, I mean that way it takes the onus off of us. Like we're not contributing, we're not making them richer, and allowing them to continue to do the things that they're doing.
Like,
They're-
Do we
they're
really
suffering
need
for
to?
it.
Do we need to keep? Do we need to be able to enjoy Kevin Spacey? Is that so like quintessential to our existence?
I still enjoy his work.
Yeah,
Like,
I do too.
I mean,
Yeah.
I
Mel-
would watch a movie and just be like, whatever, it's Kevin Spacey, right? Like he didn't
Yeah.
try to rape me, so
like Mel
Just
Gibson.
because it didn't happen to me, that means it's fine.
Well, no,
But-
it's not a trigger because like I'm.
No,
thinking,
but
like,
so an example of Mel Gibson. Mel
Yeah.
Gibson is starting to come back a little bit more.
and that movie apparently was terrible.
Which
No,
one?
but
Daddy's
Uh,
Home.
Oh, Daddy's Home
Daddy's
too?
Home 2.
Oh, I wasn't. I thought he was.
Just-
But
I can't
he's
believe they made a sequel
starting
already,
to.
and we haven't gotten Step Brothers
He's making
2
a
yet?
comeback very,
He's
Yeah,
starting
the
to
other
show. So he's starting to show up in more. And for me with
Daddy's
this with this question, I'm like with my faith, I like the idea of people having a second chance. Like to me, there should be a lot more reform than just condemnation.
Yeah.
So then it should be like, should you give some like Kevin Spacey now? Of course, I'm like, no, dude should face justice.
Absolutely.
He should also get help.
Yeah.
But say 20 years down the line, if you see he is a different person, should we not give him that other chance? Because that's the second, to me, that's the second part. As much as it's, yes, I don't want to support this evil person for what they've done. People can change, and humanity and society likes a comeback story. They do like that. Do you then forgive? Do you then move on?
Kevin Spacey should come back in a movie as himself, making a comeback in the Hollywood industry, in the movie industry.
Oh boy.
He'll win an Oscar.
But
I think there's I mean, if you lose social cachet, I mean that's the price you pay, right? I mean, if he can't be prosecuted, but at the same time, I mean, you can't just suffer from allegations. Like I can make an allegation against you right now.
Yeah.
You haven't done anything to me. So does that mean you should be fired and then ostracized from your social group? No.
Well, that's what's coming up a lot now. Is there's all these people being accused, but it hasn't been proven. It's just people accusing them. But suddenly their careers are over.
But then
there's some that
there's,
have admitted, but
like-
there's others that are just like.
Well, Spacey admitted, right?
And
Well,
there's
I
the-
think
I'm gay, so it makes everything alright.
Yeah, that was a bad time.
The
I mean,
difficulty
they should have been two separate statements.
Yeah.
Well, I think the problem is
they are inherently tied together.
And
I've read through it multiple times, and they aren't inherently tied together. He's not. That's not what he's trying to say.
But you have some media outlets saying, the headline is Kevin Spacey comes out as gay.
Yeah.
Comes out as living as a gay man. And then other headlines, Kevin Spacey sexually assaulted a 14-year-old boy 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Or something like that, right? So it's very although in his statement, he is basically saying oh yeah, and also by the way, now I'm living as a gay man. And it's like, okay, what does that have to do with anything, right?
Yeah.
That's what I mean. Like, they should have been two absolutely separate statements
and
made at separate times.
Yeah.
And I don't think all this correlation about them being tied together and that
with
it makes the homosexual community look bad because it makes them look like they're all pedophiles.
Yeah, the way he
I think
did it.
that's absolutely
The way he
ridiculous.
did it was, it seemed like he was using his homosexuality as an excuse for what he did.
Oh, the
and
memes are amazing.
that's where he went wrong.
But with Mike's point, I get that, and unfortunately I do believe people do just, they see a chance where it's like, I can get my 15 minutes, so they're going to go for it. But that's not to say that people shouldn't bring it up. I don't. You gotta figure out a way where it's comfortable for people to come forward, for people to say it, and still not get victimized for saying it, while creating an opportunity for there to still be burden of proof. There's got to be a middle ground, and unfortunately, both camps are very entrenched, and there is no middle ground.
Yeah, I think there's absolutely 100% a problem. I don't think the solution is putting the burden of proof on the accused, right? I think it's innocent until proven guilty exists for a reason, and while I don't know what the solution is, I know it's not putting people in a position where just because someone is of a certain gender, you're giving them the benefit of the doubt that they wouldn't do things that other people would, right? So I think just because someone's a woman doesn't mean that they're beyond falsely accusing someone to ruin their life, right?
Oh,
I mean, there are crazy people out there. There are bad people out there. It doesn't matter. They can be men or women. And I think that's the way our law, the way our laws are designed, the way it is, and our court system, our justice system is designed the way it is because of that, right?
Yeah.
Never give anyone the benefit of the doubt. No, it's
Trust no one.
Trust no one, Mulder. Yeah.
It's just sad, man.
It's
People get power and they think they can just do things to people and treat people however they want. People are just objects for their
it's unfortunately, statistically, it's been more men doing that.
Absolutely.
And I wish that was as a guy, I wish that wasn't the case, because then there are cases, statistically less, where women have done that with men, and it's just
What would have done?
we can't assault or false allegations. There was a case
False
with
allegations are the ones
there was a
that get
case
me,
with a football player down in the States where he was a college pro, high prospects. He got falsely accused. He got jail time.
I see them twice a month, man.
And then he was like later on it was proven that it wasn't the case.
A veteran was just awarded like $1 million or something, like because they prosecuted him, they kicked him out of the army, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Ruined his life.
Yeah.
It was the Central Park Five, the 5 African American teenagers who were convicted of gang raping a woman in Central Park, and they spent 20 years in jail before DNA proved conclusively that they had nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's where it's
Lives ruined.
There are
even now that they're out, they're still like
it's a generational
stigma
against
them.
right?
and then there are definitely false allegations. I just wish it wouldn't be a situation where people were afraid to go forward.
Well, do we teach young girls like early on in life, maybe like at the beginning of puberty, like teach them about like what could happen to them? You know
The
what I'm saying?
possibilities.
Yeah, it's like if this happens to you, like teach them how to fight. You know, I think like self-defense classes for women, and then also positive gender identity maybe or something. I don't know. Like maybe like teaching men how to be not submissive to women, but respectful, like gentlemen. Well, I'm not.
No. Sorry.
So maybe that's a solution to because women need to be in a position where they know beyond a shadow of a doubt what the right thing is to do, and that they're going to be okay if they do it. Right? If you get attacked, if you get assaulted, the first thing you do is go to the police. You know, the first thing you do is get a rape kit. You know, you don't wait. Don't hesitate.
Don't feel like you've done something wrong. I think that happens from what I hear at least.
No, and then there's a stigma from people once it's happened where it's like they don't believe the victim. They're like, oh no, you're just lying. You're doing this for attention, or oh no,
wearing that dress.
You shouldn't have been wearing that dress, or I saw you go in there. So then
you were flirting with him.
You were flirting and all that.
Well,
it's a multifaceted issue.
And those are really good points. Like a lot of people do use those excuses. Like there's no right. No one has a right to rape another person.
Yeah, those aren't valid excuses at all. Oh, you were the dress. You were dressed up. No, like you were flirting with him. That doesn't mean he could rape me.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't realize that was a free pass.
Yeah, no. I've got a friend who's just naturally very bubbly. Like she didn't dress in any state that you can consider provocative or anything.
She's just friendly.
But she's just very friendly, very outgoing.
And it could be mistaken as
like when I think of that, or people I've met through the shelter who have been raped, like and all that, and some of that it's not just people who are involved in sex work. It's not just people who dress like
it could be
stereotypically teenager, or where it's just like everything's out and revealed. It's anybody. So there needs to be and to kind of say with what you're saying, like it's a common platitude or common expression. Like in a relationship, there's compromise. So I think in a society there should be compromise.
Absolutely.
Like guys should be submission isn't a bad thing.
No.
Like it's we got to change how we look at that. Where it's like, oh, I'm being forced to submit. It's like
you could beat the crap out of this woman. Just chill.
Like you can, or on the flip side, she could be Ronda Rousey and like wreck you.
Yeah. But no, I mean, like by and large, like that's, and again, that's like, I mean, if that wasn't, it's so weird because you have women using the point that's like, oh, we walk around being a potential victim, and also we're just as strong as men. It's like, well, which one is it, right? Yeah. I mean, so I think.
Put Ronda Rousey in the ring against Brock Lesnar and tell me that women are just as strong as men.
Yeah, that's like, she's like the woman version of Brock Lesnar, right?
So that's what I mean. But there's a reason why women fight women in the UFC and not men.
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways. It's.
Yeah. So I mean, what?
No. So I was just saying, like, I think, like, people should. It's one of the many things that needs to work, be addressed. But like, we got to change how we view submission.
Yes.
Like, it's like, oh, it's this terrible thing, like you're being forced to tap out or whatever. Right. It's like, no, you might not necessarily want to do it, but it can be the decent thing to do.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, like, I might not always agree with what my friends want to do or whatever, or it's a stupid example, but it's I don't actually have one, but it's just like you compromise, like in a relationship, in a friendship, and in society. Yeah. Might not agree with the laws, but I'm here, so I'm gonna abide by them.
Yeah, like in a relationship, you may not want to go to IKEA and have a fight. but your girlfriend, your wife, whoever, she wants to go to IKEA and look at the couches or something.
Which
you just want to get what you need and get out of there.
I love a fight.
I've gone to I've been so lucky. I've been so lucky with my wife. We've never fought in IKEA.
Oh,
I go there. I go there and I see people fighting. I'm like, why do people go? What is it about this place that brings it out?
We were having this discussion when we were having breakfast at IKEA. I don't know who it was. I heard it, I think, last week. Somebody said IKEA is the place you go to fight. Mm-hmm. And I thought, how many fights have I gotten into at IKEA? Yes, that is where I am the angriest. Like, that is where I fight.
I get so irritated. I do not.
To harken it back to a great movie, where'd the big fight in 500 Days of Summer happen? In a place like IKEA.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's where they realized their relationship was in shambles.
Yeah, I think I was saying maybe they turn up the heat. It's the crowd that really gets on my nerves.
Yeah, because people that
just
really
drift
dumb.
through. They don't know what they want.
Yeah.
They're just standing in the middle of the aisle.
But I feel like that when I go to any store.
Well, yeah, that could be anywhere.
I mean, it's not just.
But it's something
about
IKEA.
I go to the mall. I have a mission. I'm in and out.
Don't stand in front of the entrance doors, or don't stand around the door.
Yes.
Don't
the top
stop.
Of the stairs.
Like when you're walking up the stairs, don't stop at the top.
Yes,
to the right.
Or anywhere between top and bottom.
Don't just stop dead on the sidewalk if you're
Don't
walking.
get in my way.
It's
Step to the side like a decent human being.
it might be how I shop. Like, for the 9 times out of 10, if I'm going to a store, I know exactly what I want, and I'm in and out within like 5-10 minutes.
I go Christmas shopping for people. I'm done in less than an hour.
If I'm going,
Let's go grocery
That's
shopping.
standing in line.
Here's some peanut butter. Here's some Kraft singles. And
There's
some alphagetti.
the only time I
Is that
go
all you
into
eat?
the only times I go into
It's the gifts
stores.
I buy people.
Alphagetti?
I think that's even
Gifts
worse.
at the grocery store. That was the joke. Pay attention.
It's like the episode of Friends where they were too late and bought stuff from the gas
Brony?
station.
Know your role.
It's like the episode of Friends where Chandler and Joey bought stuff from the gas station.
Yes, exactly. It's exactly like that.
Yeah.
That's
I got you. I got you.
yeah. I'm gonna buy you a map of Ontario.
No, thanks.
A road map.
Spoiled it.
Toilet seat covers.
Yes, I don't need this.
What exit do we get off at? Well,
Open up. I can't say.
If only there was an app on my phone that I could use this for.
If only there was some sort of global positioning system.
But
Computer screen on my dashboard.
it's like I'll go to comic book stores, or when it was here, occasionally I go to HMV just to browse. I'm like, I got time to kill. I'll go check out and then look at stuff to buy later. I think people do that with IKEA, and I'm like, that's weird to me.
That's why they have a website.
Okay, full disclosure, I did that the other day. I was charging my car, and I went into IKEA to get a couple hot dogs, and I said, well, I still got time, so I walked around the store, and I bought some organizational supplies.
So there's, I'll admit,
But
like,
I mean, were you one of those drifters who stand in the middle?
No, I moved around pretty quickly.
There's been times where
you're
Jill and I have been like, we want to get furniture, and we've looked up some online, but we've seen it's not in stock, so we'll go and we'll go and check out. And then the idea is like, all right, we're seeing what's there, then we can get home, see the space, and then go from there. And then next time we're there, we'll walk in the exit. So that we through that entrance by the cash registers right to where everything is, so we don't have to do this again.
Right.
The showroom
Like
floor.
that way we're just, but you go through the showroom floor, but while we're there, we're not just standing idly.
Yeah.
We're like, we might be in and out in an hour and a half or less, but it's still like, so.
The worst IKEA shoppers are the elderly and children.
Yeah.
They're confused and slow. And they're like, well, I was about to walk over here, but no, I'm going to stop and turn around and walk in the opposite direction.
I understand that people have children in places, but when you're going furniture shopping, I say leave the kids with somebody else. Like, don't.
Yeah, I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
it's not like you're going to the X or like what, Dave and Buster's or something. It's not Chuck E.
We should go to
Cheese.
Dave and Buster's.
Yeah,
What are we
should
doing
go to
here?
Dave & Buster's.
Oh, right.
Next time,
Let's have Dave & Buster's on the way home.
That was the
We
look,
could.
because you guys couldn't see, Mike just gave me a look of disappointment, being like, why am I here with Chris?
That was a look of realization.
no, it's like, oh, we're here for you. No, all the four of us should go to Dave and Buster's for sure.
That'd be fun, yeah.
We're not done podcasting. I just need.
Yeah.
He needs to smoke.
You guys talk amongst yourselves.
All right.
We will wrap this up soon, because I'm getting hungry, but.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I'll speak later.
Dude.
No, okay, I'll say it now. I was watching You Gotta Eat Here yesterday, and there was this excellent restaurant I saw that's just down the street.
Really?
Yeah, well, like 10 minutes away. Well, yeah, down the street.
What's the place?
The Ship, I think it's called.
I've heard of it. I haven't been there
It
yet.
looked fantastic.
There's a bunch of there is fast food. There's a bunch of great breakfast places. Do you guys like breakfast food?
We had
We
breakfast.
just had breakfast.
You
But
guys
I always
suck because Bedrock's amazing.
I work.
Is it a Flintstone theme?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Can we go?
I'll have more breakfast. Although
Would you?
Talk me into
Yeah,
shit.
sure.
I gotta go to that Ship place, man.
Yeah,
We're right
Mike's
here.
kinda got me sold.
I saw it yesterday.
Okay, no,
it just
no.
seems
Bedrock?
serendipitous.
Either place. I'm down for it.
I
But
sort of want Bedrock.
Bedrock
I mean, yeah,
Bistro
I want
has Bedrock
both,
Bistro
really.
has
What
all
is the theme of the ship?
Yar.
Nautical? Pirates?
Oddly enough, not nautical.
If my server is not a pirate, I'll be very
Very upset.
If it is not like that episode of Fresh Prince where Will worked in the pirate restaurant,
Yeah.
the Shivering Timber, it
Is
should
that
be
what it was
that.
called? The
No,
Shivering
no, it
'Cause
wasn't.
that's a great name for a
It
seafood
should be called a
restaurant.
seafood restaurant. Should be called
The
that.
Shivering Timber.
The Shivering Timber.
Ah, that's
Yar.
$1 million. Anyone who's listening, do not steal our idea.
Or give us payment.
Yeah, either way. I'll settle for a royalty, so I don't have to do any work.
Yeah, no, that's the plan. That's the idea. Yeah. So, did you hear about Star Wars having a new trilogy?
Yeah, Ryan Johnson. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your thoughts?
Curious.
Yeah.
I've always, like, from the moment I found out that Ryan Johnson was writing and directing, like, okay, this guy's gonna kill it.
Right.
Because I knew how good he was. I saw Looper. That's the only thing I've seen from him. But just from that quality of that movie, I'm like, he's gonna kill it.
Right.
So I don't really like the same guy doing. Maybe he's just like being a what do they call him? Like a showrunner to the new trilogy.
Essentially, like Lucas was on the original trilogy after New Hope.
Yeah,
maybe.
that's okay. Like, I don't even like JJ coming back for episode 9. They should have just got another guy.
Yeah.
I don't think I think Disney or Lucasfilm is running into problems with people wanting to play by their rules.
Yeah. It's
Which I understand. You want to make your
it's-
movie and not have anyone tell you how to make your movie.
Well, it's kind of interesting because with Marvel, it's almost the exact opposite. Where now they're finding where the movies are doing strongest is where the director is allowed to add a bit of a flair, a bit of a
like the
personal thing, as long as it adds to the story.
Yeah.
Like Ragnarok's a great example. It's
Like that movie is a comedy because of Taika Waititi.
yeah, and
Like-
Black Panther is definitely going to have its own flourish while still being a part of that, instead of just being a uniform thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with Disney, it seems on the Lucasfilm Star Wars side, they're like, no, we just got this back. We want more uniformity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they want to control it. They want it to be tight like Marvel is. But
Yeah.
see, Marvel has an overarching narrative, but they're letting their filmmakers have a little bit of reign.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's more so that the director will say, okay, I want to do this, and then it's up to the studio saying, no. Like, they're giving him so much leash.
Right. Yeah.
They're approving. They're not giving free reign, or they're not tightening it so tight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
when I read about it, I was actually, and I still am. I'm cautious on it. Not anything against Ryan Johnson. Like I haven't seen his work, but by all accounts, he seems like a guy who's in good hands, and everything I've seen so far from The Last Jedi has me excited. It looks great.
Yeah.
But it's more so like, to me, Star Wars is still that special franchise.
Yeah.
Like, even though the prequels were what they were, like, it is that special franchise. And as much as I love the Marvel movies, like, Screen Junkies uses this analysis where they're like, it's become more like a long-running show where you're like, that was another great episode of it.
Of Marvel. Yeah.
Of Marvel.
Yeah.
And I don't want that with Star Wars. So I don't want it to be churned out every year. I don't want it to lose its specialness.
It's, like, Star Wars movies were an event. You had to wait 3 years or 18 years for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's... On one hand,
absence makes the heart grow so much fonder.
Yeah, on one hand, it's great. We're getting a Star Wars movie every year, where I thought we would never see another one.
Exactly,
again, right?
And the Star Wars fan in me loves that because I want more stories.
But I want it to be that special.
Yeah.
new Star Wars movie. And you're like, oh, it's 2017. We're getting another one.
Yeah.
Where 2018, we got another one.
Right now, I like that it like one a year. It still gives that chance.
Yeah.
But it's still a little bit of me is like, oh, this is getting too much.
Yeah, like, yeah, it's almost hard to say that this is becoming too much Star Wars.
Yeah.
What have we become? Too much Star Wars? Is there such a thing? Yes.
Yeah, and
Kathleen Kennedy, there is such a thing.
Like, I'm not trying to be too negative. I don't want to be negative on it because I love it and I of course, want more of it.
Yeah.
But I don't want it to be like, and it's not a knock against the MCU because I enjoy it, but it's still a big thing, but it's not as. It's objectively not as big as it was.
Yeah.
Where they're not even 10 yet, and their Ragnarok was what? It's 17th. That's insane.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're just talking about Star Wars now.
If you talk about me, you'll know.
So Christian and Tommy are back. So like I asked Mike like what his feeling on like the announcement of the new Star Wars trilogy was, and with me I'm saying like on one hand I like the idea, but on the other hand I'm not happy about it, just because I want Star Wars to still be special.
Yeah.
And it's where it's becoming one a year, and then could be like Marvel where it's 17, where it's now another episode of Marvel, which is great, but it's not as special.
Yeah, I heard you don't want it to be diluted.
No.
Down, but
like
I
Star Wars, like Mike said, was an event. Yeah. It was an event picture. Like it is, box office wise, I think still the franchise, and I'm like you should treat it as such.
Yeah. Well, that's why what I'm excited about, if they were to go the route of the new trilogy covering the Old Republic, and like like Darth Revan and things like that.
Yeah,
I think I don't think it waters down or dilutes Star Wars too much. It's its own new event.
Yeah,
if they were to continue the story of Rey and whatever, like say Rey has children or she starts her own Jedi temple. If they were to continue that and just follow the same group of, I guess they're moving away from Han, Leia, and all of that into new people, but if they then follow those people and move like then it gets watered down. Well, there's so much room to explore.
To me, even if you kept with those, like I agree, I don't think there's too much more you can do out of those characters, but space them out. I'd almost just prefer to space out release schedule, where I'm like I want more Star Wars, I want more stories, but then I like as that lifelong fan, because Star Wars was like the first non-cartoon movie I ever saw. So, and my dad introduced it to me, so it's got like that special emotional place in my heart. So I'm like, I don't want it to become just another franchise.
Well, they could do it right if they space it out properly.
Yeah.
Like if they spend after this trilogy is done, they spend the next decade planning the next trilogy. But in that meantime, keep giving us the one-off stories.
Yeah,
like, give us the Han Solo. Give
us
the
one-off stories. The one-off stories I like.
Yeah.
And then you could do them. Maybe just instead of having it be, because we had episode 7. I'm forgetting the title.
Force Awakens.
Thank you. I was about to call it The Last Jedi, but that's 8. But you had Force Awakens. And then the following December, we just had Rogue One. Then we're getting Last Jedi, and then I think we're getting the Han Solo movie, and then you're getting Episode 9, where it's like, yes, Star Wars is December month, but at the same point, I'm like, absence. I am quite tired and not good with words.
Star Wars is December month.
So we put that on a plaque somewhere.
Star Wars is December. December is Star Wars month. Like, it will take the box office.
Which is why I hope that after this trilogy is done, that they don't do that. They give us our standalone movies, and then they give us our trilogy without standalone movies in between. But I think that's what spaces out the trilogy.
Like, you could give it a 2-year break. Like, give it a 2-3-year break, and then have it be new trilogy, and then 2-3-year break, and then do one in the summer or something.
Are we complaining that we're getting too much Star Wars? Is that really
that's what we were saying.
That's what we were saying. It's weird to say, because like I've wanted it, and I was with Mike where you're like, you're never going to get another movie, and now it's like a bevy of riches, but I'm using terms wrong. I know.
No, I don't know if that's wrong.
No,
I don't think
all
that's
these
wrong.
things-
It's
I think you're right,
just
you're right.
it's just interesting that you said it.
Yeah, it's like
Interesting way to look at it.
like
A bevy of
a
riches.
bevy of
Fictional
riches.
riches.
Fictional,
But
like
there's so much to it. Like I want Mace
that. There's
Windu.
so much that you want where you're like,
So much.
this is here. This is an option now. But then, I guess with me, I don't want it to get to the point where it's nothing special anymore. So it then becomes a non-option. Like with comic book movies, as much as I love them and I want them there to be more of them, I'd love a Moon Knight show. I'd love a Union Jack show. I'd love all this where it's like lesser characters getting on the big screen or the Netflix, the small screen, whatever. But how soon is this going to go the way of the Western where suddenly it's like so saturated that en masse nobody cares anymore? And then you're not going to get them.
We're
And then
approaching
if
that
you
point with
we're-
movies.
and then
we're
if you
gonna
don't
be-
get them, if you do get them, they're just crap.
Yeah, we're
I think after
approaching
these-
peak comic.
After these two Avengers movies, I mean, the only thing that can save the MCU after these next two Marvel movies is Spider-Man. Continuing with the new Avengers, I think it's going to be a little tough to get people into that. But if you can include Spider-Man into it, then
See,
I think that they're going to be okay.
if
But
they were
this
able
really
to
is
get
the end for
if
them.
they were able to get the Fantastic Four rights, Galactus is the next event villain,
Yeah.
and that would be
And then you can bring the X-Men into that as well.
yeah. But then
That's
not
how you
even
save
just in
MCU.
comic book movies, because right now DC is like, say what you will about the quality of their flicks, like because Batman Superman sucked. It's awful, but
I still enjoyed it.
I wouldn't go that far.
I still
It's
enjoyed
just-
it.
It's just
It was bad, but I'm glad I got to see it.
it wasn't bad. It just wasn't good.
Yes. Actually, that's the best way to put it. I'm still very thankful and glad that I got
For
to
me-
see that
for-
movie. Because we were talking about Batman versus Superman when we were like 13 years
Oh,
old.
all right.
for me
We're sitting in your
the
basement
most
like, we
fru-
should see a
take your word
Batman
for it.
versus Superman movie.
the reason I say it sucks is I'm like there was a good 3 movies in there.
Yes, absolutely.
3 to more movies in there.
Oh, and Batman
but
versus
it,
Superman?
yeah,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
instead you got one giant jumbled mess
Yeah, just-
that wasn't even a good movie.
Well, that's where DC is going wrong. They're trying to play catch up to Marvel as
Oh,
opposed
which-
to
yeah,
following
yeah.
the Marvel
So hard.
rubric.
And-
Like, Marvel painted a picture for you, and then gave you a paint by numbers map on how to do it
Like,
yourself.
I think
and you
there's-
just scribbled all over it.
Like I still think there's a way to do it without doing the exact Marvel method, without doing origin stories upon origin stories, because Batman doesn't need one.
No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
Superman
They could
doesn't
just
need
jump
one.
right into a Batman
Children
movie.
come out the womb knowing Batman's parents were killed and Superman's from Krypton. That's
Well, even
it.
Flash doesn't need one now because of the Flash TV show, and I
And
think
then-
that's also where they made a mistake by not casting Grant Gustin in the Justice
I
League.
would have gone with a different Flash. To be like, to me, I grew up like growing up in the '90s, especially with the
TV Flash
excellent
or the Ezra
the movie
Williams?
Flash. Like, especially growing up with the excellent Justice League show, I've been like, do Wally.
Yeah,
Just do Wally.
Well,
Yeah.
see, the Ezra Miller, the guy who's playing the Flash in the movie, he's more of a Wally to me. He's great at comedy and sarcasm and things
Yeah.
like that. He's not Barry Allen.
No, and that's like
no,
when
absolutely. Like Grant Gustin, he is Barry Allen. I really love that.
and then
that
when
Flash TV show.
Ryan Reynolds was Green Lantern, I'm like, yes, Hal Jordan does have some comedy to him, but he's more serious than that. As I was watching that, I'm like, I could buy you more as a Wally Flash than as
Oh
a
yeah, yeah,
Hal.
oh yeah. We were saying a
But-
long time ago that
Yeah.
Ryan Reynolds should be Wally West.
Yeah, but so like Batman Superman went during the lead up to it. One of the things I loved with it, like the trailer and the advertisement for it, was that it has a living quality. Like stuff has happened. Because then
Yeah.
there's really good Batman stories
Mm-hmm.
that you can tell without needing to wait 5 years or 2 movies to get to. Where a Robin's already been killed, awesome. Sign me up for the Red Hood story.
Well,
Which, with a Joker who kills, or a Batman who kills, you can't do.
Because I
Because
really-
Batman would have just straight up killed the Joker.
I would have really wanted to see that movie, like Joker killing Robin.
Yeah,
Which you
like,
could
I
you
wanna
can
see
do,
that in the
but
film.
you can do, or you could do like they did with the awesome Under the Red Hood movie, tie it in, like have it be the prologue to the movie.
Well,
have
yeah,
it be
that's
the
what
intro.
that's what disappoints me about the standalone Batman is that it was originally rumored to be that it was
Yeah.
supposed to be the prologue to Batman vs Superman. You see
Yeah,
why Batman becomes so jaded.
yeah,
Like everybody's giving them crap over Batman being the villain essentially in Batman vs Superman, but I mean, you gotta understand, he's been doing this for 20, 30 years.
Well, and that's
the
where...
world has beat him down. Now he's jaded.
Sorry.
The Joker killed his partner. Like, I totally understand why Batman has kind of lost it at this point.
Mm-hmm. See, that's what I've been trying to say is... you were saying how all this stuff's happened already. That's my problem with how they've depicted Batman is there's all these great stories that have already happened that we're not going to see.
Yeah. No,
Batman's old now.
No,
not old, but I mean, like, he's not Clint Eastwood yet, which he should be, but anyway.
If they were recasting a Batman, they should go back in time and show us how he got to this point.
Like there's all these great Batman stories that I know Ben Affleck would be great in.
Yeah.
I like him as Batman and Bruce Wayne. I love him at some points. But that already happened. Yeah, and we're not going to see it.
No, and there's
already happened, and there's no Penguin.
There's the catch-22 of it. Like, on one hand, I like the idea of, like, great, we can get to some other stories. Stuff has happened. Because, I'll say, watching Avengers 1 and then Avengers 2, Avengers is better than Age of Ultron. But I enjoy Age of Ultron at points much more than the Avengers. One, because it's better cinematography, because there's no stupid out-of-nowhere upside-down shots that take you right out, just to get nitpicky. But then also, you're at the point where, great, I get to watch these characters interact. I get to watch this. I don't have to sit through the establishment part. Establishment is fun, but when all you have is this establishment, it gets tedious. So on that point, I like the idea of, like, we're going to the lived-in quality, where they're doing the Nightwing movie eventually, and it's the guy who did the Lego Batman movie. I'm like, awesome, because that dude knows these characters. Lego Batman was amazing. So him doing a Nightwing movie,
Batgirl too.
Yeah, Joss Whedon's doing Batgirl.
Right.
So, but with Dick Grayson already being Nightwing, I'm like, that's awesome. I'd love to get to Tim Drake. Tim Drake was probably my favorite Robin, and then when he did the side Red Robin stuff, it was a great run.
Are they coming up with another Watchmen?
It's a TV series. Yeah.
I didn't even know about
Amazon,
that.
I think, is doing
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be cool.
Which
I think so as well. I feel like the Watchmen movie was great.
Alan Moore will be upset, but he's upset by everything.
About everything. He's sitting in a cabin in Scotland with no shirt on, just yelling at the wall.
He's the angriest man.
The angriest man.
Like
Alan Moore, angriest man.
I loved him cameoing on The Simpsons a few years ago. Did you see that one?
Yeah.
Lolo, I love you.
Like he's the angry, but Watchmen was a great movie.
Absolutely.
It was really good.
But that story deserves more than the 2.5 hours. It was a lot.
I'll probably willingly, I'll probably lose some credit. Like, I'm not the hugest fan of the book. Like everybody, for me it was built up so much, and I get its place and I recognize its place in comic book history. But then I've read others that have done similar things and did it better.
Yes,
like they didn't have a giant squid monster at the end, which was way out of left.
So good they took that out of the movie.
Yeah, I know.
People say, "Oh, well, that's different from the comic book."
It's
a
better.
Giant squid would not have worked on film.
There's things that work in comics that won't work.
It's a giant squid.
If I hadn't seen the movie before I read the book, I probably would not have finished the book.
You've mentioned, like, you mentioned you want to see A Death in the Family, and I do too. But that's one that if you were going to do that on the big screen, you would have to make so much adjustments.
Oh, absolutely.
Because in the comic...
And it has to be R. It has to be R.
In the comic, as I'm reading it, and then Batman's, like, Jason Todd's dead. Batman's seeking after the Joker, but suddenly, like, you can't touch me because I'm the ambassador to Iran. I'm like... This is comic books.
It has to evolve with the times. Like
Seriously,
that was the thing. They go to Afghanistan. I think is where Joker blows them up.
Yeah. So Joker becomes the ambassador. So he's got diplomatic immunity, and then Superman has to stop Batman from pursuing the Joker. And you're like, why?
Is this written in the 80s?
Yes, it was 89. It was 89.
Okay.
So there's stuff that works,
very much part of the Cold War,
and there's stuff that works in comics and stories I love in comics that just would not work on the big screen.
Yeah, well, you have to evolve it for the times.
Well,
he'll be ambassador to North Korea.
But also,
they'll be fighting ISIS in Syria. You know?
But like, so Final Crisis, DC's like one of DC's bigger, more recent crossover ones. Like Batman was killed, by Darkseid, and then there was the Battle for the Cowl where Jason Todd briefly took it, and then Dick Grayson became Batman and took Bruce Wayne's son on as Robin, and then Tim Drake became Red Robin because he's like, no, I got to do some stuff, and Bruce isn't dead. He's going through time. I'm like, that story would be awesome to watch in live action. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Because it would be like, here's a character who's dead, but he's not dead. He's going through time. Some things only work in comic book in that medium.
Comic book lines that probably wouldn't work on the big screen. I was recently, I haven't read the actual issue, but I was reading about the issue. It's Batman and Flash combined.
Bat Flash?
Yeah,
yeah,
so
like Batman takes over
Flashback.
Flash's body,
There's-
but like Barry Allen's still in his head, but like
Yeah.
Batman's gone like dark, like fully.
so
like,
it's
to the
I think it's
bad
called
side.
Batman Metal or something, but there's like 8 different Batmen from across. I think it's DC's multiverse or whatever.
Yeah,
Which I'm intrigued by, but
absolutely, yeah. But it just seems
on the
so
other
weird.
hand, I'm like, what?
Yeah.
I saw a picture of the Bat Flash, if we can call it.
Yeah.
that.
Well, because
I
he's
wanna
now
read
he's
it,
now the
but
Death
yeah, you can't
Flash,
see it.
and then
Yeah.
it's weird. Comics are weird. Like I love them,
Yeah,
but they're
sometimes they get.
I'd love to see that story though, but that's not something that's gonna
No, and
that's
that's
gonna
where-
work or play over well with
no.
audiences.
If they were gonna ever do it, I'd be like, that's where your line of animated movies would be great
yes,
for that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Like you can't do it like
And
that.
I
It has to
want
be animated.
like I'd love Marvel to do more of that. Where like
yeah,
I've been
DC does animation.
I've been rereading the I just reread the entire Spider-Man 2099 title,
Nice.
which was
I
excellent.
want to read that so bad.
And they've only really like I ended up downloading it because I own 3 trays that collect most of the run, but there's going to be at least another one, if not 2, and I'm going to buy those when I get there. But outside of that, the only 2099 ones you can buy without like eBaying individual issues, and I read in trade paperback, is $100 for half of the Doom 2099 run. Because it's so out of print.
Yeah.
I
and
love
then-
companions, but I'm not spending that much money on it.
And then there's the X-Men run, which I found on eBay, and I've put it on a Christmas list, and it's part of the X-Men 2099 run. So when I can, I love financially supporting, but most of it, they're not going to re-release
Yeah.
for reasons. Like,
Yeah.
I think it's because Marvel was going on bankruptcy, and some of the stuff, as much as I love that universe, like, Ravage was weird.
Yeah, they don't. There's a lot of it they don't.
Some of
consider
it was
canonical anymore.
not that good. So that, but I'd love to visit that universe. Like Spidey 2099, probably my favorite Spider-Man.
Yeah,
Just like a really cool character.
Cool, yeah.
And then
absolutely cool.
I'd love to see a live action, but it'd be hard to do. So do it animated.
Yeah.
Do it animated. Put it on Netflix, please, so then I don't have to buy like 5 other subscription
Well, that's the
services.
thing.
Yeah.
Disney's gonna
They're,
start.
yeah, they're gonna take all of their stuff off of Netflix and have
Like-
their own streaming service.
I know.
People like cord cutters complain. Oh well, I'm paying all this for no channels that I watch. Well, now it's turning into I'm going to have to subscribe to 20 different services.
Yeah.
And it's going to cost me more anyway.
Which for me, like Jill and I, we haven't got cable because we're like we
Yeah, I don't have cable. I don't need it.
no, we don't need cable. Like most of the stuff we watch is on Netflix, and then if we like, I own a ridiculous amount of DVDs,
Yeah.
and then the other stuff like and Blu-rays, and then
Blu-rays and
yes, stuff I
DVDs.
will download, but then when I can buy it, I will.
Yeah.
But then it's just where we're like, crap, man, Disney's doing their thing. I want to check out. I'm curious about Discovery, but I don't want to buy CBS's thing because as much as I enjoy me some NCIS, I'm not gonna
Is
pay
the
$10 a
CBS
month
one-
for it.
Is that even available to us, or is it just?
I'm
the
not
US?
sure actually.
Oh,
Oh yeah, it is just the US.
Yeah, I don't think it's.
Yeah, so like in Canada
I
we
got no
can't,
problem, I'll pirate it.
Up here, we
So-
only have Netflix, Crave, and
which Netflix just took off the awesome Spider-Man animated show from the 90s and the X-Men one. It just
Oh, they
left.
did,
Yeah,
eh?
yeah, they did. But,
Yeah.
but I only hope that they replace it with the Batman animated series from the 90s.
awesome.
Which I've got that. I've got Justice League. The only ones I don't have are Superman the animated series and my own copy of Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There,
Which-
yeah.
I'm excited to. I know it's finally out now, like as a full compendium. But I'm really excited to read the Dark Knight 3 Master Race.
That
Frank Miller.
sounds-
Oh,
Frank Miller did they finally finished.
Why
They finally
not?
finished the trilogy for,
See,
Master
the Dark Knight
Race?
Returns.
Frank Miller's Batman.
Where have I heard that?
I'll
before?
be honest. I haven't been the biggest fan of.
No?
No. I
The Dark
got
Knight Returns was incredible.
Dark Knight. It was, but at the same point, that I always keep in the back of my head. I'm like, that's. it's an interesting take on Batman. It's a Batman I
it's the older,
appreciate.
grizzled Batman. It's where they got a lot of the
It's the
BVS
inspiration for a lot of modern Batman and how, but Batman, yes, he's extreme, but he's not that much of a jerk, especially in the second. Like the continuation of it, where it's like, here, hunt a rat in the Batcave, child that I've abducted and kidnapped.
This Bat character.
But again, that's the point. Like he's become so grizzled and dated, and
there's points where I'm like, I'm interested in other people's takes, but I'm also like, at some point, I'm like, that's not Batman. Whereas much as I
do know what you're saying.
As much as I love the Dark Knight, like Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. Batman Begins to me is still the standard for a live action Batman from the comic being on the big screen. Because 10 minutes into the Dark Knight, he became Chris Nolan's Batman, where it's, oh, he could be me, I'm going to hang up the cowl and pass it over, because Batman wouldn't do that.
He would never do that.
So then it's very much like Frank Miller's Dark Knight, where I'm like, yes, it's interesting, I'm intrigued, I enjoy it, but
it's not your Batman.
He's not Batman to me.
No.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah. You were looking like you were about to say something.
What did you say?
You said Batman Begins was the...
that's the first Nolan film, right?
Yeah.
It's the premiere Batman.
Which, Dark Knight is a better movie. It's better made.
It's a great movie.
It's a great film.
Best
It's
Joker in the world.
amazing. But it's not comic book Batman on the big screen.
It's not Batmanically correct.
Yeah.
Well,
And
that was
I
the
like
whole
Chris
point, though,
Nolan's
right?
Batman.
I
I
mean,
enjoy
Nolan
it.
Nolan wanted a Batman based in reality,
Yeah.
and not in comic books, and I think he did a really good job at that.
But he still had that within Batman Begins, where it was still based in reality, but it's still very true to comic book Batman.
Exactly. You can be
I
in reality and still be true to the character.
Yeah. Because you could have kept that going. Like,
He threw out the window in Dark Knight Rises. By the end of it, that's not Batman.
No,
Not even close.
no.
I still...
It wasn't even Bruce Wayne anymore.
No.
I you know what though, I still really like Dark Knight Rises.
No, I did too.
No,
I did
that
too.
movie can... Well, I'm not going to say it, but it's not a good movie.
Like, to me, I really, really like Dark Knight Rises. Jill and I revisited the three of them this past summer.
Yeah.
And then, especially for me, it was not to knock Ben Affleck, because he was a good Batman, and I'm interested in his Batman.
Yeah.
I'm interested in him watching him play more regular comic book Batman than Frank Miller's Batman. Anyways, like, I wanted to revisit Batman Begins, and then after that, I'm like, it's been a long time since I've watched The Dark Knight, and I just got to separate that. I'm like, and you can, where
I
I'm
want
like,
to watch it.
objections aside, it's a great film.
Yeah.
And then
It's the
rewatching.
performances that sell it for
The
me.
pacing of the movie is what I love.
Oh yeah,
It's creepy,
but then
it's uneasy.
It's one of those movies, and I can't think of many, that hits the ground running. That's what I always say about Dark Knight, is that it hits the ground running.
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't waste any time setting up characters. It just goes right into the story.
While it does set up its characters, it's still moving.
Yeah,
it's not like let's grind to a halt for an exposition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like
it's like here's exposition while crap's happening.
Yeah, the only like kind of calm, because it needs to come every so often, but the only real calm that comes in that movie is the scene when Bruce and Rachel are on the balcony.
Yeah.
And he says, you said you would be with me if I wasn't Batman anymore. Is that true? That's the only like lull in the movie.
And that's like maybe 2 minutes long.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so integral too after
the
explosion.
Yeah, and you were saying how it's creepy. That's the thing. I remember sitting in the movie for the first time and just being on edge because he never knew when the Joker was going to come. He could come from anywhere, right? And he's a bad mofo Joker.
Like the magic trick scene was incredible, and when they just disappear. Like,
I'll still say like his Joker.
It made me jump.
His Joker is like still in line with comic book Joker, and that's like Joker's probably one of my favorite villains in all of literature.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's so many facets to that character. Where yes, he can and has been the Caesar Romano clown with the creepy painted over mustache that he just didn't shave.
Yeah, he refused to shave.
Looks terrifying.
No one can ever knock Caesar Romero.
No,
but he's been that, and he's been like the
gangster Jared Leto.
The gangster Jared Leto. The Jack Nicholson take, the mobster.
Yeah, the terrible Jack Nicholson take.
And then
don't. Okay,
Yeah,
let's step outside, and
then
we will have fisticuffs.
Settle this like men.
And then the anarchist, very dark almost humorless but dark humor Joker,
Yeah.
like Heath Ledger channeled.
Yeah.
So,
I think-
but back to Dark Knight Rises, like as I watched it,
really?
sorry, no, I'm just saying, like
Yeah.
as
Not to beat a dead horse.
as I watched it, I was able to find so much more to enjoy this time around. Where I'm like, no, Bane is awesome, except for when they.
He was a good antagonist. I'll give him that.
they
Until they emasculated.
Yeah,
him.
no, there's
was
a
very
way to
torn on
there's a
that
way
Bane,
to do
though.
Talia without like essentially emasculating like Bane and then being like, oh, Talia's been the mastermind and Bane's just a henchman.
I'm just a
Again.
I cry now.
Oh man, freaking! I love Tom Hardy's performance. It's
Me too.
I
for me,
can
it
understand
was
what he
wonderful. Like I loved his performance, and the movie, even though yes, it struggles as a Batman movie, it really did well as a trilogy, like as a third part of a trilogy, tying into the first one and being a direct sequel to the second one. So as a
do that.
trilogy piece, that's where I really appreciate it.
I will forever want to see what could never be though, and that's the third Batman being with the Joker again.
Oh,
Well, the
yeah.
thing-
That's the big question. What,
No,
would,
well-
what would have
well, I
happened?
Yeah,
think-
what would Nolan have done?
I
Would
think
Nolan have
Nolan-
ended it with 3 if he could keep going with
Well,
Joker?
I think Nolan
I
said
mean,
like he will always be here, and I think like I always pictured it as Joker's eventually going to break back out and be the villain, but he's going to be like the Hannibal Lecter. Like Batman's got to go into prison and he's going to be there. They're going to have a scene together. You can't not keep going with that character, especially with that performance.
That's the relationship of Batman and the Joker.
Yeah.
Is that it's symbiotic and it's never ending.
Mm-hmm.
There's that line at the end of Dark Knight in Joker's last scene where he says, "You and I are destined to do this forever."
Yeah.
And that's the scene, or that's the line that I love the most in that movie, because it in that little bit of dialogue, it outlines their entire relationship and what's to come in the future, because they never stop. Joker needs Batman, and Batman kind of needs Joker, but he can do it without him.
I'm just thinking of a terrible pun where it would have been like, "We're destined to do this forever." Batman forever.
And then Batman turns and gives the thumbs up.
Yeah.
Looks right at the camera.
all of a sudden he's got
Thumbs
the
up.
costume.
Barely is
That's-
able to move his
That's
arm.
my favorite thing in Batman Forever. Hey, Batman! And he turns into Batwing. Like, he can somehow see Commissioner Gordon on the ground and gives him the
And
thumbs
Gordon
up.
can somehow see him.
Yeah, exactly. It makes no sense, but
Terrible movie.
I love it.
Terrible
The stiff
movie.
necked. It's fantastic.
I was also reading about Tim Burton's projected third movie. Like he was supposed to do the third Batman movie.
Well-
they took it away from him because
Yeah.
he wanted to continue going dark.
Well,
and
the-
they
here's the-
basically just wanted to franchise the toys.
No,
so
well,
they were
here's
like,
the here's the thing though. Like
We've
with
had discussions about this.
we've
in the
had
past.
we've had conversations with this, and you can if you watch get the Legacy set with the 4, because especially the making of documentaries for Forever and Batman and Robin where Schumacher apologizes, that's worth the money alone.
He starts out the commentary for Batman and Robin like, "I'm very sorry."
Like at one point he's like, if you were going in loving Batman Forever and the other movies and you came out disappointed, I'm sorry, because that wasn't my intention. And then when you see it where how much the studio was pushing the toy side and all that, you do feel a little bit of sympathy for the guy. Like, even though he's like, this is a living comic and all that, like, and bad direction, you still can feel some sympathy to him.
Yeah, he was kind
But
of forced into it.
With Burton, he wasn't going to come back after Batman. And then they're like, no, come back.
Yeah,
Don't you want to make a Tim Burton movie?
Yeah.
And then he
Like,
did.
they didn't know what that meant.
They didn't know what that meant.
Yeah,
Because
and then he did it.
Batman
And then
Returns...
he had the third in his head though. Like he was ready to do the third.
Batman
too,
Returns,
no.
I like a lot. It's
I really
not.
like that
It's
movie. Yeah,
to
I
me.
love
I'm
that
like,
movie.
I love
it's.
it, yeah.
I love that movie, but I'm like, it's not comic book Batman, but I still love it.
doesn't
But
have
then,
to be, though.
and with how dark it is, like Mike and I,
Oh, it's demented.
our jokes, our
really
joke
is.
has been like, someone in Warner Brothers was sitting down after the movie got made. They got to the point where they dropped the child in the sewer, and it's like, what have we done?
We gave him creative freedom.
Like no one watched the dailies, and then when you hear about like they did the toy line with McDonald's because they're
Yeah.
like, yeah, sure,
Yeah.
and then parents are like, are you serious?
Did you see that video on YouTube about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a video where they're talking about the history, and McDonald's had the tie-in with the movie, and they saw the characters, and they're like, we can't have toys for this.
Yeah.
Imagine a Danny DeVito penguin toy in your hand.
It was severe
penguins-
studio oversight that.
Yeah, the
That-
penguin is vomiting black sludge.
Yeah.
We can't have this in McDonald's
Yeah.
toys.
I remember those McDonald's toys.
And then parents,
I still have them.
and then parents were flipping out like. When you're a kid, there's so much stuff you don't notice it in that. But then when I watch it, I'm like when I watch it as an adult, I'm like, there's a lot of messed up stuff here.
There's a lot of innuendo I did not pick up on.
Exactly, and a really BDSM friggin' Catwoman.
Well, I don't understand, like, parents are, like, freaking, like, your kids don't understand it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that, like, on that part I get, so Tim Burton, of course, when he's like, all right, I'm up for a third one. They're like, nah, don't you want to make another movie?
No, that's all right.
No, you go make your own Tim Burton.
Like, don't you want to go make another movie? It's like,
Go talk
okay.
to Johnny Depp and see what you guys can work out.
Why don't you go make Superman with Nicolas Cage?
Like, I will say, out of the stuff,
I would love to see Nick Cage as any superhero.
there's a
Ghost
documentary.
Rider.
There's a documentary guy made called I can't remember what it's called, but it's
Thanks
about
for
that.
reminding me.
Oh yeah. No, he did a documentary called "The Death of Superman Lives," and it's
Yeah.
it's a really interesting documentary
I've seen
about
pieces
that.
of it.
And then when you actually see a picture of like the most circulated one, the flash is like the flare is up, the flash is up in the photo, so it just looks awful. But then when you see other still shots, you're like, that doesn't look as bad. When you hear
Didn't he have long hair in one of
he
the
did,
photos?
Long hair.
but
Like
it was
an oil
the
slicks
90s.
costume?
It was the 90s. Like
Yeah.
like that's what Superman awfully looked like with the mullet and everything in the 80s and 90s. And
Terrible.
Yeah.
the more I hear about Tim Burton's,
Like, even that, you can't, like, I know it's ridiculous to just take your glasses off and all of a sudden people can't recognize you, but that hair you can't mistake.
Which-
you know?
Yeah.
I will argue, like, to me, everybody goes on about Superman like, oh, it's the dumbest costume. Like, they nailed it. They absolutely nailed it in Superman Returns. Brandon Routh did it, where it was a great moment where they're sizing him up and they're realizing all the similarities, and then he gives this goofy wave.
Yeah.
And then they burst out laughing, and that's the thing. And that's the thing that Chris Reeves did, and then they kind of had in the
you have to
comics
be
where
aware.
it wasn't just a costume, because a pair of glasses is a terrible costume. It's an entirely different persona,
Right.
to the point where
It's a
they're like,
bumbling idiot.
this guy is Superman. This guy, there's no way.
Yeah. You, look at
You
Henry
would watch
Cavill
him
and-
change, and you would be like, he's going to
Man of
cosplay.
Steel.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that. I mean, I love Man of Steel. I think Henry Cavill is a great Superman.
Oh, he's wonderful.
But you don't have that same
No.
dynamic
The
between
suspension
Clark Kent and Superman.
the suspension of disbelief is less in Man of Steel
Yeah.
and Batman vs Superman because he's huge now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where like Christopher Reeve, he was athletically
Yeah.
built. He was like a swimmer. Same with Brandon Routh. He did the same thing. He did a lot of swimming to get in shape. But Henry Cavill is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm
All
thinking
aboard
about
the Super Beefcake Express,
Yeah,
right?
like even if you watch the cartoons, the WB cartoons, Superman is huge.
Well, that's and
Yeah, I
if,
don't understand how you can't be
I
like,
was talking-
this reporter is this
Yeah.
size? Like,
Clark, you're working out a lot.
I was talking
what
with
reporter is that big?
well, me and Steve on a couple podcasts ago, or actually no, the most recent one. Like we were talking about the '90s Spider-Man cartoon, and Peter Parker's jacked in that.
It
Yeah.
is.
That's a Spider-Man. I would have loved it if they just skipped high school, because I'm done. Because he was in high school for 30 issues,
Nobody wants
except
to
for the Ultimate
No,
Run.
you know, I love that he's in
No.
high school and Homecoming. I think it's perfect. It's the Spider-Man that we all grew up with.
I
And
was done with high school when I finished high school.
I think
I was
it
done with
works.
high school before I finished.
Yeah, same, yeah,
Like
sure.
I get where they're going, because it's kind of the Harry Potter approach, where it's like the kid can age into the role.
Yeah.
and he's
it
done
does
great.
give him like a next decade of Spider-Man. to
He's
work
done
with.
great, and they've done well. But there's other Spider-Man stories to get to that I want to get to that they
will.
were just retreading. Where I'm like, yes, do a proper Venom story, even though we bungled it already. But like, what about Kraven's Last Hunt, which is an amazing story, but you can't do that with a high school Peter Parker. Or there's a bunch of Spider-Man stories. He was in college for like 40 years, and now he's a young adult. But my point is, get out of high school.
Yeah.
He was there for 30 issues.
And like everyone hates Craven, so
Yeah, well.
All right, Christian has spoken.
yeah, okay, I guess that's the reality now.
Like, yeah, no,
They
there's.
could still do a Craven's Last Hunt with a high school
No.
Spider-Man. You know,
We're
like,
doing Craven's last one.
Well, it's
I'm getting
interesting
cranky.
with what's his name now? Tom
Holland.
Tom
Holland.
Holland?
I can't think of his last name. I was going to say Hiddleston, but that's the other guy. Tom Holland, he's only got one more movie left on his contract.
Yeah.
So he's got Homecoming 2 or whatever they're going to call it.
Electric Boogaloo.
Or Spider-Man Prom.
No, yeah, it's Spider-Man because they're doing with like the big dances for the grades or whatever.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay.
Well, isn't that supposed, like, wouldn't that then be the end of high school, right? He's going to prom, so
Nah,
that's his final year in high
I think
school,
they're
so-
because he's in 10th grade. I think in Homecoming, 10th or 11th grade or
But
something.
I mean, like,
No.
time is going to pass before the next one, right? Like, he's in the next 2 Avengers movies.
Who's
to say that they don't follow, like, they don't age him through that
They,
period?
but they've
He's
already
gone.
announced the next one is like the next big year event, which is where MCU is running into problems where they're like, oh yeah, Spider-Man's like it's 8 years after the Avengers, and right after Civil War, but Thor's like it's been 4 years since
Yeah, they're
thing where it's like you gotta wind this in a little bit. You were better when you weren't specifying time.
just don't mention it at all.
Because as soon as you specify the time, you're making it complicated when it didn't need to be.
I'm trying to remember, though. In Homecoming, did they
Self-incriminating.
specify that he was in grade 10, or did they say that he was a junior?
That's the same thing, isn't it?
No, junior is grade 11, senior is grade 12.
Ah, I can't remember.
No, sophomore.
And I just watched it last week.
Sophomore's 10?
Sophomore is 10. Yeah,
Oh.
freshman, sophomore, junior, senior.
No, 'cause
America.
Liz-
Just use
like-
numbers.
Liz was a year older than him, and they I think it was like, oh, he got to date a sophomore,
Yeah.
So then he'd be a freshman?
a junior, or whatever grade 10 is.
We just went through this.
We just went through this.
America, just do grade 9, 10,
Freshman,
11,
sophomore, junior,
12.
senior.
Numbers.
I'm pretty sure that's the way it goes. Freshman,
Okay.
sophomore. Freshman, sophomore, junior, senior.
Okay,
Oh.
well,
So you're pretty much a kid until you're a senior.
yeah,
there's-
essentially.
There's
Essentially.
no middle ground there. There's no
But
like,
yeah, so what were we talking
I
about?
just always assumed,
I don't know.
assumed prom was for, your grade 12 years.
Yeah, that prom was
Yeah.
the final act.
Yeah. How do we get here?
I don't know.
All right.
Lots of ways.
Yeah.
Well, we're having a lull. Are we going to call it quits?
Yeah, I
and go
think,
eat some food?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
2:40.
Yeah,
It's like we've been doing this for 2.5 hours. I think it's time to go.
I'm hungry.
All right,
Yeah,
dear
pretty hungry.
listener, if you made it through this, I appreciate it.
Congratulations.
I applaud you.
We are important.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
listening, and Mike, Christian, Tommy, thanks for doing this, especially
Oh,
because we had
my
nothing
pleasure.
prepared.
Yeah, let's do this again.
Yeah, no,
Yeah, let's
I'd be
do this
down.
again.
We can even set up Skype podcast.
Yeah, we got to figure out how to do it through the magic of the internet.
Yeah,
So
it'd be a lot of fun.
there is
Just
ways,
Skype call each other.
but then how do you record it?
You
microphone.
can screen record.
Oh yeah, but then do you lose audio quality?
Maybe.
I don't know.
We can Google it. You know,
I listen to a lot of
I'm
podcasts though,
sure you
where,
can
where they
do
just
it. Right,
where they
yeah.
just have the mic
Right.
set up by the computer that the guy's skyping from. And
Oh, okay, fair enough.
so like you still use your mic. It just
We'll just make Mike drive us out here every month.
Yeah.
Or if I go in for a day, I'll bring
I
my
don't know
laptop
if I
and
wanna
mic.
do that.
That's
Yeah.
what I did with Steve. So, all right. Well, on that extended note,
Yeah.
thanks for listening, everyone.
Thanks. that was a little too flamboyant. I mean, let me try that again.
What everybody else is going to say.
I mean, thank you.
stuff
Thank you very
coming
much. It has been
through.
a pleasure.
All right. Thanks, guys, and
Thank
thank
you.
you, listener. Have a great day, and God bless, guys.
bye.